The darkness suddenly shudders, and a whisper echoes from the void, calling your name. Tonight, you are not alone. Welcome to 15 horror stories that will pull you into the darkest corners of fear, where light never touches. Each story is a door, cracked open, leading you to chilling mysteries. Footsteps in an empty house, an invisible gaze behind the curtain, or a red streak oozing from the wall like blood coming back to life. You'll hear about ordinary people, like you, trapped in a curse they cannot escape. Did the mirror in your room just shake, or was it the wind? Don't take your eyes off, for each story will cling to you, making you wonder what's lurking in the darkness of your home. The lights may go out, but fear does not. Sit back, lock the door, and let us lead you into a world where dreams turn into nightmares. Are you ready? Because once the story begins, there's no turning back. Listen carefully and be cautious. Something is watching you right now. Have you ever walked through a crowded place, yet felt as if you were the only one there, watched by an invisible pair of eyes? That was the feeling I experienced on a January night in 2023 at a vast international airport in Europe. But this time, it wasn't just a feeling. Something was waiting for me in the dark, and it knew my name. My name is Lucas, 22 years old, and I work as a passenger assistant at the airport. My job is to guide travelers, help with visa or passport issues, and make sure they find their way. I'm a 22-year-old male employee at one of the biggest airports in Europe, where I mostly help passengers with directions and solve immigration problems. This airport is a maze of lights, with thousands of people passing through it every day. But when night falls, the long corridors grow cold, as if they're hiding secrets no one dares to uncover. That night, I was on the graveyard shift, 12 hours, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It happened during the 12th hour of my shift, on the transit level of the airport, where international passengers wait for passport checks before collecting their luggage. It was 3 a.m. The air was freezing, and my breath came out in misty clouds. Most flights had stopped, and only a few weary travelers dragged their feet across the terminal. I left the desk to patrol a bit, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. I decided to check out the gate for the only flight that had just arrived. Suddenly, a strange sound came from Gate 7, the one where the final flight of the night had just landed. It wasn't the sound of rolling suitcases or murmured conversations. It was low and screeching, like someone dragging their nails across glass. My heart pounded faster, but I told myself it was just the wind. I approached the gate, the overhead, neon lights flickering weakly. The gate opened. A stream of passengers filed through into the transit area, looking perfectly normal. They pulled their luggage, chatted quietly, but something felt off. The air felt heavy, like an invisible storm was looming. Then I saw her. A woman stood motionless in the crowd, as if time had frozen around her. Her tangled brown hair was singed in places, her clothes torn and filthy, like she had just escaped a fire. She looked to be in her late 20s. Her hair was missing in patches. What remained was scorched and unkempt. Her eyes were wide, unnaturally wide. Her pupils dilated, locked onto mine. It wasn't the look of someone needing help. It was the stare of a predator sizing up its prey. I wanted to look away, but my legs wouldn't move. She smiled, a twisted, emotionless grin. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving just the two of us in the empty corridor. The airport intercom crackled, distorting into incomprehensible sounds, like whispers in a language I couldn't place. And then I heard my name, Lucas. But it didn't come from her. The voice came from the darkness behind her, where the light didn't reach. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman staggered toward me, each step clumsy, as if her body didn't belong to her. When she saw me in uniform, her strange, dilated pupils locked onto mine. She approached slowly, looking terrified and confused. "You work here, right?" "I need help," she said, her voice trembling. But something about it was off. It didn't sound human, more like a distorted echo coming from somewhere that shouldn't exist. I reached out instinctively to steady her, but the stench stopped me cold. It wasn't just body odor. It was the putrid stench of death, so foul it made my nose sting and my stomach churn. I pulled my hand back immediately, but it wasn't just rot. There was something else. Sharp, metallic, like scorched iron, mixed with the earthy scent of damp soil. I led her to a row of chairs and kept a cautious distance. She sat down slowly and I stood facing her, trying to keep my voice calm as I asked what kind of help she needed. She looked at me, eyes growing even wider, as though she were staring through me into some endless void. I've been through something terrible," she whispered. "I had a really bad experience. That's why I'm running. I haven't eaten in days. And I think they put something in the water they gave me on the plane. Ever since I drank it, I haven't felt right. My mind's been foggy." But the way she spoke, each word halting, disconnected, sounded like someone trying to remember a dream. I didn't believe her. There was something in her eyes that told me she wasn't really speaking to me. "What happened to you? Who did this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head, trembling fingers brushing her scorched hair aside. Then she lifted it from her forehead, revealing something that made my skin crawl. A tattoo, right in the middle of her forehead. It looked like a barcode, like the ones you'd see on supermarket items, with a string of numbers below it. But this wasn't a normal tattoo. The lines shifted, slowly writhing beneath her skin as if they were alive. I shivered. It felt like the tattoo itself was watching me. "You wouldn't understand," she murmured, voice sinking to a whisper. "They did this to me, and they're still watching." I asked who they were, but she only laughed, a cold, inhuman sound. Then, without warning, she grabbed my hand. Her long fingernails dug into my skin. "Don't call the police," she hissed. Then she stood, gripping my shoulders and shaking me violently. "Do not call the police, I mean it!" I flinched, trying to pull away. She began laughing, loudly, wildly, throwing her head back and staring up at the ceiling like she could see something I couldn't. Her laughter echoed off the walls, mingling with the warped, garbled announcements coming from the airport's PA system. I looked around desperately, hoping to spot a colleague, but the corridor was empty. Just me and her, trapped in flickering neon light. Then she whispered, "They know I'm here. They always know." Suddenly the overhead lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed us, leaving only the faint green glow of the emergency exit signs. And then I heard it, a breath, not hers, behind me. Slow, heavy, like something large, breathing in the dark. I wanted to run, but my feet felt nailed to the floor. The darkness closed in, leaving only the faint green glow illuminating her face. Her eyes were now completely black. No irises, no whites, just two bottomless pits. "They chose me," she said, her voice laced with a raspy hiss like wind rushing through an abandoned tunnel. "And now, they want you." I tried to recall airport protocol. I knew by aviation regulations any case like this had to be reported immediately to security or the police. "I'll call someone for you, okay? The police can protect you," offered, But she sprang to her feet quick as a phantom. She didn't like that idea. She screamed and grabbed my shoulders. "No! They'll find me! They'll take me back!" Her face twisted like she was fighting something inside her. Then she began making strange gestures with her hands, before suddenly breaking into sobs. Not the police. They won't like that. I'm talking about the ones who did this to me. I stepped back, trembling, hand fumbling for my radio. But before I could speak into it, she pulled something from her coat pocket, an old weathered book with a cracked leather cover and yellowed pages. She opened it and pointed to a page covered in strange symbols, squirming under the flickering light. "This is how they do it," she whispered. "They mark us, like prey." I stared at the page, and God help me, the symbols moved. They writhed and twisted, forming the shapes of screaming faces, mouths wide open in silent agony. "Don't stare too long," she warned, slamming the book shut. But it was too late. A sharp pain stabbed into my temple, like a drill boring into my skull. My vision blurred, and in that moment, I saw them. Tall, faceless figures at the end of the corridor. They didn't move, but I knew. They were watching. The airport PA system warped again, emitting sounds that weren't human, like a chant in a dead language echoing from some forgotten crypt. I turned back to her, but she was inches from me, her breath icy cold against my face. "You saw them, didn't you?" she asked, lips curling into a grotesque smile. I wanted to scream, but my throat seized up, tight like it was being crushed. Then my radio crackled, and a voice I didn't recognize came through. "Lucas, don't take your eyes off her." I froze. How did they know my name and who the hell was speaking? I knew I had to do something. "Sit down, I'll get you some water," I said, trying to buy time. I ran to the nearest counter, grabbed a bottle of water and an energy bar, hoping to stall and figure out how to get help without escalating things. I brought them back to her, thinking if I could calm her down, I'd make it to the security station. But when I returned, she was gone. The water bottle and the energy bar lay, untouched on the floor. She hadn't taken a single bite or sip. She had refused them, with a look of fear in her eyes. I looked around. The corridor was empty, but then I heard footsteps. Not just one set, dozens, from all directions, uneven, dragging, as if dozens of people were shuffling forward, dragging something heavy behind them. I bolted toward the corner of the hall where a security camera was mounted, hoping I could find help through the live feed. But when I looked at the monitor, I saw myself standing at Gate 7, talking to no one. There was no woman in the frame, just me, mumbling, pointing at empty space. My heart stopped. I turned around, and she was there, standing right behind me. But she wasn't her anymore. Her skin was cracked like dry earth, and from those cracks oozed a black liquid that hissed and smoked when it touched the floor. "You've seen too much," she said, her voice now a chorus of dozens, echoing, like from a crypt. The barcode tattoo on her forehead glowed as if searing into her flesh, emitting a shriek like overheated metal. I collapsed, crawling backward, but the floor trembled beneath me, like the entire airport was about to collapse. Windows along the hallway fractured, glass shattered and flew in every direction. I shut my eyes, bracing for death, but when I opened them, she was gone. I was alone, lying in a field of broken glass, blood dripping from a gash on my arm. My radio buzzed, repeating the same message in an urgent loop. "Lucas, get out! Now!" I stood up, legs shaking, and sprinted toward the elevator. But when the doors slid open, it wasn't the elevator. It was a pitch-black room. The walls were covered in the same symbols from her book. In the center stood a towering, faceless figure, unmoving, one hand extended, inviting. I slammed the doors, shut and bolted back down the hallway, but it had changed. The signs above were no longer words, just strings of gibberish, and the lights flickered in sync with my heartbeat. I heard her voice. No, their voices, coming from everywhere. You can't run. I burst into the security office, slammed the door, my heart thundering in my chest. Inside, the security monitors were filled with static. But then, for a moment, one image broke through. Dozens of faceless figures, standing silently at gate 7, staring into the camera. Then the feed went black. I switched on my flashlight and scanned the room. In the corner, I spotted an old metal box with a rusted lock. I didn't know why, but I had to open it. Using all my strength, I smashed the lock. Inside, a stack of aged documents, reports of missing persons at this very airport, going back decades, names, dates, and barcodes. Each person bore the same barcode tattoo she had. The final line read, "Don't look into their eyes. They will take your soul." The door shook, louder with every blow. Something, or many things, were trying to break in. I stuffed the documents into my bag, searching for an escape. There, a ventilation shaft overhead. I climbed onto a table, ripped off the cover, and pulled myself into the narrow duct. Below me, the door crashed open. I heard footsteps, not human, heavy, slithering. I crawled faster, sweat blinding my eyes, my heart pounding like a war drum. The duct led to an abandoned section of the airport, where no light remained. I dropped down, landing on damp, sticky concrete. In front of me, her book, lying open on the last page. The symbols glowed, forming a circle on the ground. From the circle, a bony, skeletal hand reached out, grasping for me. I screamed, kicked the book across the floor, and ran toward a faint light at the end of the hall. By the time I stumbled out into the transfer terminal, daylight had broken. My coworker, Anna, saw me and rushed over, horrified. "Lucas, where were you all night? You look like you've seen a ghost." I told her everything, but when we checked the security footage, there was no woman, just me, alone at gate 7, mumbling, pointing at empty air. But in my pocket, the documents were still there. And that night when I looked in the mirror, I saw it. A faint tattoo at the base of my neck. Barcode lines. Spreading. Under the dim moonlight, my family's cattle farm looked like a bleak painting. Skeletal trees casting long shadows against the pitch-black sky. My name is Ethan. I was 13 years old, living in a remote rural area where the nearest neighbor was miles away. In the winter of 2018, I stayed at our cattle farm with my family. That night, my parents had to leave on urgent business, leaving me alone in the old wooden house where the wind howling through the cracks in the walls sounded like ghostly whispers. They left me behind to receive a midnight livestock delivery. My task was simple: wait for the truck driver, check his paperwork, and make sure everything was in order. They gave me a checklist of what to do when the driver arrived: verify the documents and count the cattle. I was used to this routine, but something about tonight felt wrong. Maybe it was the dogs barking nonstop behind the house, or the way the moonlight twisted the shapes of things, as if the whole world was warping out of place. I sat in the kitchen as the clock struck 11 p.m. The house was eerily quiet, with only the occasional crackle from the fireplace. I checked my father's list again, trying to shake the chill crawling up my spine. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. And then, I heard it. The low growl of a heavy engine in the distance, like some beast lurking in the dark. The truck was coming. I could hear it drawing closer, and I braced myself to meet the driver. I grabbed my coat, picked up a flashlight, and stepped outside. The truck's headlights blasted straight at me, so bright I had to shield my eyes. The engine cut off abruptly, and a figure stepped down from the cab. He was tall, wearing a filthy coat, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a baseball cap. My heartbeat quickened, not from the cold, but from something else. There was something about the way he stood, completely still, like a statue, that made me want to run back inside and lock the door. "Are you Ethan?" he asked, his voice deep and raspy, like someone unused to speaking. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I'm here to receive the delivery." He didn't reply right away. He just stared at me, or rather, through me. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw his eyes, bloodshot and unblinking like those of a wounded animal. He asked again if I was the receiver. I said yes, trying to get this over with quickly. But as he stepped closer, a foul stench hit me. It wasn't sweat, it was rot, like decaying meat left out for far too long. I stood there, flashlight trembling in my hand, trying not to show my fear. The driver stepped forward, his heavy boots crunching against the dirt. He was tall, dressed in filthy clothes, the brim of his cap hiding most of his face. "The cargo's right there," he said, pointing toward the back of the truck. But something about his voice felt wrong, like every word was being pulled from a deep frozen place. I nodded, keeping my distance. "I need to check the paperwork first." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled stack of papers, but instead of handing them over, he held onto them tightly, staring at me. I asked again, more firmly, for the documents. "Kid," he said, voice dropping lower, "you shouldn't be out here alone. It's not safe." It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a threat. A chill crept down my spine, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm fine, sir. Just need to see the paperwork." He chuckled, a low rasping sound like bones grinding together. Finally, he handed me the papers and I gave them a quick glance. But then he started saying strange things. "Are you afraid of the dark?" he asked. "Have you ever heard voices calling to you in the night, Ethan?" My heart slammed in my chest. I never told him my name. How did he know? I took a step back, pretending to examine the documents, but my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight. I glanced toward the back of the truck, where the low moans of cattle echoed. But underneath those sounds, there was something else. A low hiss, like the breathing of something, of not quite animal. I wanted to inspect the cargo, but the way the driver stared at me made my feet freeze in place. He tilted his head, as if listening to something out in the dark. "They're getting closer," he whispered, though I couldn't see anyone else around us. I decided I had to act quickly. "I'll go open the pen gate to let the cattle in," I said, moving toward the enclosure. But he stepped in front of me, blocking the way, towering like a wall of stone. He tried to coax me toward the back of the truck, telling me to look inside, but I refused, keeping my distance. "Get in the truck, kid. There's something you need to see," he said, his voice disturbingly sweet. I shook my head, heart pounding. "No, I'll check everything from here." Suddenly, the truck's headlights began to flicker, once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the farmyard, leaving only the pale moonlight on his face. He stood there staring at me, and I no longer felt safe. Then I heard them. Footsteps, not his. They came from the field behind the house. Heavy, deliberate steps, like a group of people slowly approaching. But when I swept my flashlight over the tall grass, there was nothing, only dry stalks swaying in the wind. I gripped the flashlight tighter, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sir, I need to open the pen gate. Please move." The driver didn't budge. He just stared at me, those bloodshot eyes glowing under the moonlight. I kept my distance, repeating that I would check the cargo from the outside. "Stubborn kid," he muttered, his voice echoing like it came from the bottom of a deep well. "But you can't run forever." His words chilled me to the bone, like he knew something I didn't. I stepped back, pretending to check the list my father had left, stalling for time. But then he moved, quicker than someone his size should be able to. He advanced, and I backed. "Way." "Don't be afraid," he whispered. But that smile wasn't human. It stretched too wide, revealing yellow, razor-sharp teeth. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry as sandpaper. Suddenly, the dogs behind the house began barking, louder and more frantic than ever before. I turned around, and in that instant, I saw them. Not one figure, but several. Tall, lanky shapes standing at the edge of the field, faceless. Just black silhouettes under the moonlight. I heard strange noises from the field, low and rhythmic, but I couldn't make out what they were. I turned back to the driver, and he was staring straight at them, as if communicating in some silent alien language. "You don't want to do this," he rasped, his voice now laced with a dry hiss, like wind scraping through bone. He raised his arm, and something gleamed from his sleeve. A knife, or maybe something worse. I stumbled back, tripping over a rock. The flashlight slipped from my hand. He lunged, trying to drag me toward the truck, but I broke free and bolted toward the livestock. 10. The darkness swallowed me whole, and behind me I could hear his heavy breathing growing louder. I reached the pen, slammed the door shut, and jammed the old wooden bar across it. Outside, I heard his fists pounding against the door, each, "Blow like thunder! Open the door, Ethan!" he screamed, but his voice no longer sounded human. I peeked through a crack in the wood and my heart nearly stopped. He wasn't alone anymore. The figures from the field had drawn closer. They now stood in a wide circle around the truck, motionless, waiting. Like they were listening for a command. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone, but there was no signal. Then I saw it. A small notebook had fallen from the stack of papers he'd handed me earlier. I picked it up and opened it. Inside were terrifying sketches. Children with their eyes scratched out, surrounded by strange symbols. One page read, "Midnight delivery. Do not let them escape." And at the very bottom, my name, Ethan, written in red ink. That looked too much like blood. I clutched the notebook, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. The pounding on the door grew louder, the wooden bar beginning to crack. The truck stayed outside for nearly an hour. Then I heard an engine starting, but it wasn't the truck. The banging suddenly stopped, and a dreadful silence fell over everything. I peeked through the crack in the door. My heart nearly stopped. The driver was gone, but the faceless figures still stood there, motionless in the moonlight like demonic statues. Then I heard a hiss, but it wasn't from outside. It was inside the barn. I turned slowly, and in the corner, two glowing red eyes stared back at me. It wasn't the driver. It was something else. Tall, emaciated, its unnaturally long arms touching the floor. It didn't move. It just watched me. And suddenly, pain pierced my skull, like it was drilling into my mind. "Ethan," it whispered. The voice was identical to the driver's, but warped, distorted. as if it came from beneath the earth. I screamed. I slammed into the barn door, trying to break it open. The wooden bar snapped, and I burst into the yard. The truck was still there. Its engine dead, and the faceless figures had turned, all of them staring directly at me now. I ran toward the house, stumbling across the cold dirt. I yanked open the door. The lights inside flickered, then went dark. I turned on my flashlight, scanning the room, and saw it. The notebook. It was lying on the kitchen table, but I knew I had left it in the barn. I approached slowly, opened it. The final page no longer had my name. Instead, there was a crude drawing of me, with my eyes scratched out, and underneath it in red ink, chosen. I threw the notebook, bolted upstairs, and locked myself in my room. Outside the window, the truck was still there, and the driver stood beneath the pale moonlight staring up at me, but his face, it was no longer human, cracked like dry earth, and from the cracks, a searing red light poured out. Then my phone rang. Even though there was no signal, I answered. The driver's voice echoed in my ear. "You can't run forever, Ethan." I hung up, but his voice didn't stop. It repeated in my head again and again. Then, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Slow, heavy. I crawled under the bed, clutching my flashlight, praying my parents would come home soon. And then, silence. Lay there, not daring to breathe until morning light trickled through the window. I crawled out and looked outside. The truck was gone. No tracks. No trace. I rushed downstairs. The notebook had vanished. When my parents came home, I told them everything. But they didn't believe me. They said I imagined it, that I was just scared of being alone. But that night, as I looked in the mirror, I noticed a thin scratch on my neck. It wasn't painful, but the shape. It matched one of the symbols from the notebook, and each night since, it spreads a little more. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the hissing. That thing is still out there, waiting for me in the dark. I am Max, 11 years old, and the summer of 2017 was the first time I experienced a terrifying truth. Not all secrets should be discovered. I was 11 years old, living in an old house on the outskirts. My family had just moved into a decrepit house where the walls creaked and the scent of rotting wood lingered through the hallways. My parents were busy with renovations, so I often wandered alone, curious about the hidden corners of our new home. One day, while rummaging through the basement, I discovered a small door hidden behind a pile of old boxes. It was unlike any other, door tiny, only reaching up to my waist, with peeling black paint and a rusty lock. I thought it was just a storage room, but the strange thing was that my parents had never mentioned it. I asked them about it, but they claimed to know nothing about the door. I decided to investigate on my own, taking a small hammer from my father's toolbox. That night, after my parents had gone to bed, I sneaked down to the basement with a flashlight. The air was cold, despite it being summer. I knelt before the door, the flashlight illuminating strange scratches on the surface, not random, but resembling the characters of an ancient language. I knocked lightly, and a deep sound echoed from within as though the room was breathing. My heart raced, but curiosity overwhelmed my fear. I raised the hammer and struck the lock. It broke easily, too easily, as if the door wanted to be opened. When the door creaked open, A gust of cold air hit my face, carrying the smell of damp earth and something sharp, like burnt metal. The door led to a small, dark room. I shone the flashlight inside, and the light reflected off walls covered in cobwebs. But what stopped me in my tracks was the whispering. Soft, fragmented, like many voices overlapping, coming from the deep darkness inside. I stood before the door, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The whispering continued, sometimes clear, sometimes faint, as though calling my name. I stepped into the room, seeing the cobweb-covered walls and an old table in the middle. The rotting wooden table had a tattered leather-bound notebook on it, along with a few candles that had burned out, their wax hardening like coagulated blood. I stepped closer, trying not to pay attention to the feeling of someone standing behind me. I opened the notebook, and inside were yellowed pages, filled with handwriting. The table had an old notebook with handwritten pages, but I couldn't understand the contents. The writing was twisted, unlike any language I knew, but strangely, the words seemed to move under the light of the flashlight, as if they were trying to tell a story. One page had a drawing of a boy who looked like me, with his eyes erased. My heart pounded. Who drew this, and why was it here? Suddenly, the whispering stopped, replaced by a hissing sound, low, drawn out, like the breath of something huge. I turned around, shining the flashlight around the room. I heard a strange noise like scratching on the wall, but it wasn't on the wall. It came from the floor, right beneath my feet. I bent down, and the flashlight shone on a loose floorboard. I pulled it up, revealing a small hole leading down into even deeper darkness. The smell of burning metal grew stronger, accompanied by something rotten, like a decaying animal carcass. I wanted to run upstairs, lock the door, and forget about all of this. But part of me couldn't stop. I shone the flashlight into the hole, and the light touched something, a hand, or something like a hand, pale and covered with sharp nails. It moved, then disappeared into the darkness. I screamed, dropping the flashlight. The light went out, and in the darkness I heard laughter, not human but like glass shattering mixed with the sound of wind. The darkness swallowed me, leaving only the pounding of my heart in my ears. I groped for the flashlight, my hand touching the cold floor. Finally, I found it, turned it on, and the light shone straight into two eyes, not human eyes, but two bright white sockets, floating in the corner of the room. I tried to find a way out, but I could feel something in the room. "Max," a voice whispered, unclear from where. "You've gone too far." I stepped back, my back hitting the wall. The hissing sound grew louder, this time closer, as if that thing was slithering towards me. I saw a shadow in the corner of the room, but when I shone the flashlight, it vanished. I turned back to the notebook on the table, hoping to find a clue. A new page appeared, though I swore I hadn't turned it. It read, "The door must be closed. Blood for blood." Under the writing was a red ink stain, still wet, as if it had just been written. I heard the scratching sound, not from the hole anymore, but from the wall behind me. I shone the flashlight, and the characters I saw on the door now appeared on the wall, glowing as though they were burning. They twisted, forming an image of a distorted face, no mouth, but I could feel it screaming. I screamed, throwing the notebook away, but it opened to the page with the drawing of the boy like me, and the erased eyes were now bleeding red. I ran to the small door, but it was shut tight, even though I hadn't locked it. I knocked hard, shouting for my parents, but there was no answer. Then I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned around and it was standing there, tall with waxy white skin, no face, only two bright white sockets. It tilted its head, and the voice echoed in my head. You opened the door. Now you belong to us. I struggled, kicking at it, but it didn't move. Suddenly the floor trembled, and the hole in the floor widened like a hungry mouth. I heard whispering, dozens, hundreds of voices, calling my name from below. I screamed, kicking at the creature, but it just tilted its head, as if studying me. The hole in the floor roared, sucking air in like a vortex. I clung to the edge of the table, but the notebook on the table flew into the hole, and from there a skeletal hand reached out trying to grab my leg. I tried to run out of the room, but the door wouldn't open. "No!" I screamed, banging on the small door until my hands bled. Suddenly, the faceless creature stepped forward, and I saw the characters on the wall glowing brightly, like they were burning the air. The voice in my head rang out, "Blood for blood." I felt a sharp pain in my hand where the blood was flowing from the wound. A drop of blood fell to the floor, and the hole stopped roaring. The creature froze, then slowly dissolved into the darkness, as if it had never existed. I banged on the door again, and this time, it opened. I crawled out, slammed the door shut, my heart pounding as if it would explode. I ran upstairs, locked myself in my room, waiting for the morning. When my parents woke up, I told them everything, but they just laughed, thinking it was a dream. My parents didn't believe me, saying I was imagining things from reading too many horror stories. I took them downstairs to the basement, but the small door was gone, and only a smooth wall remained, as if it had never existed. I tried to forget about it, but every night, I hear the scratching from beneath the floor. A week later, I found a small scratch on my hand where the blood had flowed in the room. It hasn't healed, and each day it spreads, forming characters like those on the wall. I've started hearing whispering at night, though I don't know from where. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the faceless creature standing in the corner of the room, whispering my name. I never returned to the basement, but I know it's still there, waiting. And I fear that one day, the door will open again. Not because of me, but because of it. In the fall of 2019, my quiet neighborhood started to change. Not because of the falling yellow leaves or the cold wind blowing through, but because a man had moved into house number 17. I'm Sophie, 16 years old, living in a peaceful neighborhood. I had never paid much attention to my neighbors, but this one was different. He arrived on a rainy night, without a truck, without belongings, just a silhouette quietly walking into the dark house. One night, I saw a faint light from his window, even though no one had seen him go outside. House number 17 had been abandoned for years, with broken windows and a yard full of weeds. But now, that light flickered every night, like a signal of something that didn't belong in the neighborhood. I stood by my window looking over and saw the tall, thin figure standing motionless behind the curtain. He didn't move, just stood there, as if he knew I was watching. I began to pay more attention to him because his behavior was very strange. Once, I saw him standing in the backyard at 3 a.m., digging in the soil with his bare hands. No tools, no light. The dirt flew up and he looked up, staring directly at my window even though I was sure I had turned off the lights. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't look away. His eyes, or something like eyes, glowed in the dark, like the headlights of a wild animal. I wanted to tell my mom, but she told me not to imagine things. She said he was just a strange person, nothing to worry about. But that night, when I checked the window again, the light in house number 17 went out, and a low screech echoed from the backyard, like the breath of an old machine. I felt a chill run down my spine, knowing I had seen something I shouldn't have. I began to watch house number 17 every night, unable to resist the mix of curiosity and fear. I noticed that he never left the house during the day, only appeared at night. My window became my observation point, where I noted every detail. The flickering light at 1 a.m., the figure moving slowly, sometimes standing for hours in the backyard, staring at the sky as if waiting for something. One night I gathered my courage, took a flashlight, and approached the fence that separated our yards. One night I decided to get closer to see what he was doing. The mound of dirt he had dug now formed a deep hole, about 2 meters wide, with strange pieces of metal sticking out. This wasn't trash. It looked like pieces of a machine. I shone. The flashlight and the light touched something red and slimy like fresh blood. The foul odor hit me, not the smell of dirt, but something decaying. Suddenly, I heard slow footsteps from house number 17. I heard noises from the backyard, like metal scraping together. I turned off the flashlight, holding my breath, but the footsteps stopped right by the fence. A low, hoarse voice came. "Little girl, go home." My heart stopped. How did he know I was here? I didn't answer, only stepped back, but stepped on a dry branch. The sound of the branch breaking rang out like thunder in the quiet night. I ran back home, locked my room, my heart racing. Looking out the window, I saw him standing in the backyard, not moving, staring directly at my room. But this time, his face was revealed under the moonlight. Or rather, something that wasn't a face. It was smooth. No eyes, no nose, only a small slit where the mouth was, twitching as if whispering. I pulled the curtain, but the screeching sound came again, this time from right under the floor. I couldn't sleep that night, the screeching still echoing in my head. The next morning I checked the backyard of house number 17 from afar. The hole he had dug was filled in, as if it had never existed, but the ground was sunken, as if something heavy was beneath it. I began to suspect he was doing something illegal, but I had no evidence. I decided to investigate further, though fear was suffocating my chest. That evening, I saw a strange package in front of house number 17, with no recipient. One day, I saw an unusual package in front of his house, but no one came to pick it up. I waited until night, sneaked over to take the package, my heart pounding. Inside was an old leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and covered in strange characters, like a map of a labyrinth. One page read, "The gate must be opened. Lead the way with blood." The words sent a chill through me, but I couldn't stop. I took a picture of the book and put the package back in its place. That night, the light from house number 17 shone brightly, not flickering like usual. I saw the strange light from his house, brighter than usual. I looked through the window, and he wasn't standing in the yard anymore. Instead, a circle of characters, like the ones in the book, lit up on the ground, as if burning. I heard whispers, not from his house, but from all over the neighborhood, like dozens of voices blending together. I ran downstairs, checked the door, but it was locked tight from the outside. And though I hadn't done anything, then I saw him, standing in my yard, right under my room's window. I saw him standing in my yard, looking up at my window. The faceless figure twitched, and a pale hand rose, drawing characters in the air. Suddenly the floor trembled, and the screeching turned into a growl, like an engine starting beneath the earth. I screamed, pulled the curtain, but the whispering now rang in my head. "Little girl, the gate is ready." I clutched my head, trying to block out the whispers, but they only grew louder, like they were drilling into my mind. I ran upstairs, locked the door, but the growl beneath the earth grew louder, making the window shake. Looking through the curtain, I saw the circle of characters in house number 17's yard, now glowing brightly, and shadowy figures. No, faceless things. appeared from the darkness, standing around the circle like a ritual. I grabbed my phone, trying to call my mom, but the screen was static, only showing the characters from the book. I tried to call the police, but the phone didn't work. Suddenly, the light in the house went out, and a cold hand touched my neck from behind. I screamed, turned around, but no one was there. Only laughter, dry, inhuman, rang out from all directions. I ran downstairs, searched for the back door key, but the floor cracked open, revealing a dark hole, identical to the one in house number 17's yard. From the hole, a black liquid poured out, smoking as it hit the floor. I heard him, no, them, from the hole. "The gate is open." I kicked open the back door, ran outside, but the neighborhood was no longer the neighborhood. The trees were twisted, the sky was red like blood, and the faceless figures turned their heads, all looking at me. I ran to the end of the street, barefoot and bleeding, and looked back. House number 17 had vanished, leaving only a mist-filled void. When the police arrived the next morning, they found no trace of him or the hole he had dug. The police found nothing unusual, saying I had been panicking. But every night I see the characters from the book on the mirror, etched into my skin, spreading like a web. I still see him in my dreams, standing in the yard watching me. I know the gate is still there, and one day, it will call to me. The forest behind my house had never frightened me until the winter of 2020, when the winds brought something that didn't belong to this world. I'm Finn, 12 years old, living near a dense forest. The forest stretches for miles, with twisted, ancient trees that block out the sunlight. The children in the village called it the silent forest because no birds or animals dared to live there. But that night I heard a sound, not the wind, but a call, faint, from deep within the forest. One night I heard strange noises from the forest, like whispering. I stood by my window looking out into the thick darkness. The moonlight shone on the branches, and I swear they were moving, not from the wind, but as if they were beckoning. I decided to go into the forest to find out more. I put on my jacket, grabbed my flashlight, and snuck outside, my heart pounding. The air was cold, and my breath formed mist. As I stepped into the forest, the whispering grew louder, but it wasn't words. It sounded like bones rubbing together, mixed with the screeching of metal. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered, even though the batteries were new. I stopped, and beneath my feet, the ground trembled slightly, as if something was waking up. I wanted to turn back, but the whispering now echoed in my head, calling my name. Finn. I stepped deeper into the forest, my flashlight shining on the tree trunks, which were carved with strange symbols. Not graffiti, but like ancient writing, burned deep into the bark. I saw the trees carved with these strange symbols, but I couldn't understand what they meant. The whispering now grew, louder, leading me to a clearing in the forest where the ground sloped down, forming a perfect circle. In the center, a smooth black stone about the height of my chest glowed with red light from the cracks within. I approached it, and a foul smell hit me. Not the smell of decaying leaves, but like blood and burning metal. I smelled something strange, like blood coming from the stone. I touched the stone, and it was burning hot, even though the air was freezing. Suddenly, the flashlight went out, and the whispering turned into a screech like the breath of a giant machine. I stepped back, tripped over a dry branch, and as I fell, I saw it. A pale hand, covered in sharp claws, reaching up from the ground, trying to grab me. I screamed, turned on the flashlight, but the hand had disappeared. I heard the screeching from below, like something moving. The ground trembled harder, and the symbols on the stone lit up as if they were bleeding. I wanted to run, but the whispering now rang in my head. "Stay, Finn." I felt a pull, as if the forest didn't want me to leave. I tried to run, but my legs felt heavy, as if the forest was holding me back. The stone trembled, letting out a low growl, and the bright red symbols twisted, forming the image of a distorted face with no eyes, just a slit mouth twitching. I saw a shadowy figure near the stone, but it vanished when I looked closely. Finn, the voice echoed in my head, not from the stone, but from all around the forest, like dozens of souls speaking in unison. I shone the flashlight around, and in the darkness, I saw them. Tall, faceless figures, standing among the trees, motionless. I felt something was watching me. I turned back to the stone, and a stream of black liquid poured out from the cracks, smoking as it hit the ground. I fell, my hand touching the liquid, and a sharp pain shot through me like an electric shock. My vision blurred, and I saw images, an ancient ritual, blood spilling on the stone and faceless figures bowing their heads. I screamed, pulled my hand away, but the liquid had soaked into my skin, leaving a small tattoo of symbols that began to spread. I tried to run from the area, but I felt myself being pulled back. The forest shook, and a skeletal hand reached out from the stone, grabbing my wrist. I struggled, but it tightened, cold as ice. The voice whispered, "Your blood will open the gate." I yanked my hand from the skeletal hand, but the tattoo on my skin glowed brightly, as if burning my flesh. The stone groaned, cracked open, revealing a dark hole beneath, from which the black liquid gushed out like a waterfall. I ran from the forest, but I could still hear the whispering chasing after me. The faceless figures moved closer, making no sound, but I could feel their cold breath on the back of my neck. I ran through the forest, branches whipping across my face, blood dripping from the scratches. The flashlight fell, and only the moonlight guided me. The hole behind me widened, pulling air in like a vortex. I heard the howling, not human, but like the forest itself, demanding something. I tripped, fell to the ground, and the closest faceless figure raised its hand, but when I screamed my name, it stopped, as if interrupted. I scrambled to my feet, ran to the edge of the forest, and when I looked back, the hole had closed. The stone had vanished. The forest was silent, but I knew it was still watching. When I got home, I told my parents, but they didn't believe me. They said I was imagining things because I was out too late. But the tattoo on my hand didn't disappear, and every night, it spread further, whispering words I couldn't understand. I never returned to the forest, but I still feel it calling to me. Sometimes in the dark, I see the faceless figure standing at the edge of the village, waiting. I fear that one day, the gate will open again and I won't be able to escape. My house had always been peaceful, until one night in October 2021, when a strange sound shattered the silence. I'm Lily, 15 years old, living in my grandmother's old house. The house is at the end of the village road, with moss-covered stone walls and windows that creak every time the wind blows. I like the isolation, but that night, a bell, a sharp, cold sound, like an old bell, rang right at midnight, jolting me awake. One night, I heard the strange bell sound in the house, even though there was no bell. I sat up suddenly, my heart pounding, checked the clock. 12 quar. The house fell silent again, but the air felt heavy, as if someone was breathing in the dark. I went around the house to check, but I couldn't find where the sound was coming from. I searched every corner, from the attic, full of cobwebs, to the damp basement, but found nothing. My mom, sleeping in the next room, didn't hear a thing. When I returned to my room, the bell rang again, this time closer, as if from the wall behind my bed. I pressed my ear to the wall, and a cold breeze blew out, carrying the smell of damp earth and burning metal. The wall vibrated slightly, as if something was moving inside. I pulled back, and in the darkness, I saw a shadowy figure glide past the window. Even though there was no one outside, I couldn't get back to sleep. The sound of the bell haunted me. The next morning, I checked the wall behind my bed, but only saw chipped paint. No signs of anything unusual. I told my mom, but she said I was imagining things. I didn't believe I had dreamed it, because the bell sounded too real, too sharp. That night, right at 12 o'clock, it rang again, this time accompanied by scratching sounds, soft but clear, like fingernails scraping against wood inside the wall. I decided to find out more about the bell. I rummaged through my grandmother's old bookshelf and found a tattered leather-bound diary that recorded stories about the house. One page mentioned a soul-calling bell hidden inside the wall to protect the family, but if rung at the wrong time, it would invite something to come. My heart raced. I pressed my ear to the wall and the scratching returned, followed by a whisper. "Lily." I jumped, knocking over the desk lamp. The light flickered, and for a moment I saw faint symbols on the wall, as if carved from the inside, glowing and then fading. The smell of damp earth grew stronger, and the floor was freezing cold beneath my feet. I wanted to call my mom, but my throat was dry. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, from the hallway, even though my mom was fast asleep downstairs. I locked my room door, but the bell rang again, this time as if it was screaming inside my head. I clutched my pillow, my heart pounding, as the bell stopped, but the footsteps continued outside the door. I whispered for my mom, but no one answered. I felt something in the house, though I couldn't see anything. Then the door shook lightly, as if someone was knocking, but not hard, more like testing if I would open it. I didn't dare move, just stared at the lock, praying it would hold. Suddenly, a cold gust of air flooded through the crack in the door, carrying the strong smell of burning metal. I turned on the flashlight, shining it on the wall, and the symbols appeared again, this time clearer, as if blood was seeping from the paint. They twisted, forming a circle, and in the center, I saw a hazy image, a faceless figure, tall and thin, with its arms stretched out as if inviting me. I saw a shadowy shape on the wall, but it vanished quickly. I screamed, and the floor shook, as if something was moving beneath the foundation. I ran to the window, but outside, the faceless figure stood in the yard staring up at me. It didn't move, but I felt its voice in my head. "The bell has rung. You belong to me." I pulled the curtain, but the bell rang again, this time from inside my chest, as if my heart was the bell. A pale hand reached out from the wall, grabbing my hair, pulling hard. I struggled, screamed, but it tightened its grip. I yanked my hair from the hand, blood dripping from my scalp, but the bell sounded like a hammer in my chest. The wall cracked open, revealing a dark hole beneath, from which black liquid poured out, smoking as it touched the floor. I tried to run out of the room, but I felt myself being pulled back. The faceless figure from the yard was now standing, right at my door, faceless, but I felt it smile. I ran down the stairs, but the stairs twisted, stretching endlessly. The black liquid surged up, sticking to my legs, cold as ice. I heard whispers, dozens of voices, calling my name from the darkness. I ran outside, but the bell still followed me. I kicked open the front door, ran into the yard, and looked back. The house shook, as if about to collapse, and the faceless figure stood at the door, reaching out to me. I ran to the neighbor's house, screaming for help. But when the morning came, I returned, and the house was normal again. My mom didn't believe me. saying I had dreamed it. But the scratch on my head hadn't healed, and every night I saw the symbols from the wall etched into my skin, spreading like a web. I still hear the bell in my dreams, though I don't know where it comes from. I dare not sleep, because every time I close my eyes, the faceless figure stands there whispering. The bell will ring again. I know it's still in the house, waiting for me to return. Today, when I opened an old box in the garage, a notebook fell out, and the scrawled words from when I was 14 made my heart stop. I'm Noah, 14 years old, living in an old house. In the summer of 2019, that house wasn't just where I grew up, but also where I confronted something I would never forget. The notebook reminded me of the attic, the place where, just thinking about it, I can still hear the slow footsteps in my head. One day, I heard a strange noise from the attic, like footsteps. I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just mice or the wind, but the noise didn't stop. It rang out every night, steady as a heartbeat, pulling me into an obsession I couldn't explain. I decided to go up to the attic to check. I remember standing under the attic stairs, gripping the flashlight tightly, my breath heavy, when a cold gust of air swept down, carrying the smell of mildew and something sharp, like dried blood. I didn't want to remember, but the notebook forced me to face it. The words I wrote told about a shadowy figure, not a person, but a distorted shape, lurking in the attic's darkness. As I flipped the page, a scrap of paper fell out, drawn with strange symbols, as if carved with nails. I had never drawn it, but the memory of that night rushed back. The footsteps stopped and a voice whispered my name, not from the attic, but from right behind me. I slammed the notebook shut, but that whisper seemed to echo in the air. The notebook pulled me back to that summer, when I couldn't ignore the sounds in the attic anymore. I climbed up to the attic, finding it full of dust and old belongings. The wooden stairs creaked underfoot, each step seeming to wake something in the dark. The flashlight beam illuminated rotting cardboard boxes, cobwebs everywhere, and a broken mirror in the corner, reflecting the light in distorted ways. I heard the whispering, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It wasn't words, but like the wind mixed with the sound of bones grinding together, calling my name. Noah. I stopped, my heart pounding, when a small wooden box fell from a shelf, opening to reveal pieces of paper covered in red symbols, similar to the scrap I found today. I picked up a piece and it was warm, like it had just been pulled from a furnace. Suddenly the flashlight flickered and I saw it, a figure tall and thin, standing behind the broken mirror. It had no face, just two dark pits where eyes should be, and its long arms reached the floor. I saw a faint shape, but when I looked closer, it vanished. I stepped back, tripping over a box, and the whispering grew louder, like dozens of voices overlapping. The mirror trembled, and for a moment I saw myself in it, but not me. My eyes were completely white, and my mouth was moving, whispering. I wanted to run, but the attic floor was freezing, as if it was sucking the warmth from my feet. An invisible hand touched my shoulder, cold as ice, and I heard laughter, dry, inhuman, echoing in my head. I turned around, but there was no one, only the red symbols on the paper, now glowing brightly, like blood spilling from the walls. I shoved the scrap into my pocket, deciding I had to find out more, even though fear was choking me. The memories in the notebook grew sharper, as if I were reliving that night. After the first time in the attic, I started rummaging through the house, looking for clues about the shadowy figure. I found an old notebook in the house, recording strange things. It was my grandmother's journal, filled with notes about the guardian. An entity trapped in the attic, forced to remain there by blood and ancient symbols. One page read, "Don't let it see you. It will take your name." I felt something following me in the house. Every night the footsteps in the attic grew heavier, as if the shadow was trying to break free. I placed the flashlight under my pillow, checked the windows, but the faceless figure began appearing in other places, on the staircase, behind the bathroom door, always silently, always watching. I tried to tell my dad, but he just laughed. My dad didn't believe me, saying it was just my imagination. One night, I climbed up to the attic again, bringing my grandmother's journal. The flashlight beam landed on the broken mirror, and it shook violently, as if about to crack. The red symbols from the paper now covered the walls, glowing brightly, and the faceless figure stood right in front of me, no longer faint. It raised its hand, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone was squeezing my heart. The voice whispered in my head, "Your name is mine." I threw the notebook at it, but it dissolved into smoke, leaving only the scent of blood. The attic floor cracked open and a skeletal hand reached up, grabbing my leg. I screamed, pulling away, but blood from the cut on my leg dripped onto the floor, and the symbols on the wall glowed even brighter, as if swallowing the light. I ran down the stairs, but the footsteps followed me, no longer from the attic, but from everywhere in the house. The notebook ended with my trembling words, but the memory of that night is as sharp as a knife. I ran downstairs, my heart racing as if it would explode, when the house trembled, as if the faceless figure was tearing it apart from the inside. I tried to run out of the house, but I felt myself being pulled back. The front door was locked tight, even though I hadn't touched it, and the lights in the house went out, leaving only the whispering, screaming my name. I ran into the kitchen, searching for a knife, but a cold hand grabbed my wrist from the darkness. I turned around, and the faceless figure stood there, tall, with eye sockets black as holes that swallowed light. It moved its mouth, and blood from the cut on my leg poured out, dripping onto the floor, forming red symbols. I heard the screaming from the attic, as if something was escaping. The floor cracked wide open, and black smoke poured up, carrying the scent of blood and burning metal. I screamed, kicked open the back door, and ran into the yard. When I looked back, the attic was glowing brightly, as if there were flames inside, but no smoke. The faceless figure stood at the door, but it didn't chase me, only watched, as if it had gotten what it wanted. I ran to the neighbor's house, screaming for help, and when the police arrived, they found nothing. No symbols, no smoke, just an ordinary house. My dad said I was panicking, that nothing was real, but I know it's real. The cut on my leg hasn't healed, and every night the red symbols appear on my skin, spreading, whispering words I don't understand. I never go back up to the attic, but I still feel it up there. Today, when I closed the notebook, I heard footsteps, not from the garage, but from the attic, as if it had never left. I fear that one day the figure will call my name again, and I won't be able to escape. The campfire crackled in the dark field, and when my friends asked me to tell a scary story, I, Emma, felt my throat go dry. I am Emma, 17 years old, living in a small village. It wasn't out of fear, but because the story I was about to tell isn't fictional. It's what I went through in the summer of 2022, right here in this village under the cold moonlight. I took a deep breath, everyone's eyes fixed on me, and began. One night I saw a strange light in the field behind the village. That field, where no one dares to go after sunset, because the villagers believe that the moonlight there carries a curse. I'm not superstitious, but that night, the silver light shimmered, not like moonlight, but like a cold flame, calling to me from afar. I decided to go out to the field to see what the light was. I continued, my voice lowering. I left the house, at midnight, carrying a flashlight, walking past the rusted fences. The air was freezing, even though it was summer, and the grass under my feet rustled, like whispering. When I reached the field, the light disappeared, but I felt a heavy presence, like someone was standing behind me. The flashlight flickered, and under the moonlight I saw an ancient stone circle partially covered by grass, with deep carvings that glowed as if bleeding. My friends fell silent, the campfire's glow dancing on their faces. I told them that. I touched one of the stones and it was burning hot, despite the cold night. A screeching sound rang out, not from the wind, but like the breath of an ancient machine coming from the earth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground, and in the dark, a figure, no, a tall, faceless shape, appeared at the edge of the field, staring at me. My voice trembled as I recounted this, because I knew it wasn't just a memory. It was still watching me, somewhere beyond the campfire's light. I continued, my voice steadier now, though my heart raced. That night in the field, I stood in front of the stone circle, unable to look away from the red carvings. I heard whispering from the field, as if someone was calling my name. The whispering wasn't human, but sounded like dry leaves rubbing together, mixed with the sound of rusted metal. I shone the flashlight, but the light was swallowed by the darkness, and the stone vibrated lightly, as if something underneath was awakening. I found a stone with strange carvings, but couldn't understand them. I knelt down, touched the carving, and a sharp pain shot through my hand, like being pricked with a needle. Blood dripped from my finger, soaking into the stone, and the carvings glowed brightly, as if swallowing my blood. I stepped back, and the faceless figure appeared closer, not moving, but I felt it pulling me in. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the earth, making the grass around me scorch, though there was no fire. I told them that I ran back to the village, but the whispering followed me, echoing in my head. Emma, the moon belongs to us. When I got home, I rummaged through the village library, finding an old leather-bound book that spoke of the moonlight curse. I read that the stone circle was an ancient gate, opened by blood, and every 100 years, the moonlight called someone to awaken the gatekeeper. I shuddered as I read, because the night I saw the light was exactly the full moon of the century. My friends started whispering, but I kept going. The next night, I returned to the field, carrying the book, determined to break the curse. Under the moonlight, the stone circle glowed brightly, and the faceless figure stood in the center, its hands raised as if in prayer. I saw other figures, dozens, hundreds, emerging from the darkness, faceless, silent, surrounding me. The smell of blood and damp earth filled the air, and the central stone cracked open, revealing a small hole from which black liquid poured out, smoking as it touched the grass. I wanted to run, but the whispering now sounded like a scream, and I felt the moonlight burn my skin, as if marking me. The campfire grew dimmer, but I didn't stop, my voice shaking as I spoke of that fateful night. I stood in the center of the stone circle, the book in my hand. As the faceless figure moved closer, I felt something in the field, like it was watching me. The moonlight blazed brightly, illuminating the faceless figures, and I saw they weren't standing on the ground. They hovered, their feet inches above the earth, their long arms reaching out toward me. I tried to read the book to break the curse, but I couldn't understand it. The words in the book were crooked, like they lived under the moonlight, and when I read aloud, Blood from the wound on my hand dripped onto the pages. The carvings on the stone glowed brightly, and the hole in the center widened, the black liquid pouring out like a waterfall thick with smoke. I heard the whispering, not fragmented anymore, but like a song, calling my name from deep below the earth. I told them that I tried to run, but the moonlight pinned me in place, my skin burning, and the symbols from the stone started to carve into my hand, spreading like a spider's web. A skeletal hand reached out from the hole, grabbing my leg, cold as ice. I screamed, pulled away. But the faceless figure itself, the one standing in the center of the circle, raised its hand, and I saw an image in my mind. An ancient ritual, blood spilling on the stone, and a gate opening, releasing faceless figures into the world. I threw the book into the hole, hoping to stop the gate, but black smoke erupted, and the faceless figure screamed, not with its voice, but with a sound like glass shattering. I saw the faceless shape clearer, standing right in front of me. It tilted its head, and I felt my name being pulled from my mouth, as if it was stealing my soul. Suddenly, the moonlight dimmed, as if clouded over, and the faceless figure froze. I took my chance, ran out of the circle, but the screaming followed me, and the symbols on my hand glowed brightly, reminding me that the curse wasn't over. My friends looked at me, wide-eyed. I told them that I collapsed onto the grass, blood from my hand soaking into the earth, and the screaming stopped. But I knew I had traded something. I paused, looking at the dwindling campfire, and my friends were silent, waiting. I continued, my voice quieter. When the moonlight dimmed, I ran from the field, barefoot and bleeding, but the whispering still echoed in my head, like an unbreakable curse. I ran back to the village, but I still felt the moonlight watching me. The village was silent, as if consumed by the moon. And when I looked back, the stone circle glowed brightly, like a cold flame in the darkness. I told them that I knocked on the village chief's door asking for help, but he just looked at me, his eyes completely white, and whispered, "You have opened the gate." I ran back home, locked the door, but the moonlight pierced through the curtains, shining on the wall, and the symbols from the field appeared, carved deep into the wood, as if rewriting the curse. I tried to tell everyone, but no one believed me. My mom said I had a fever, that I was delirious, but the wound on my hand hasn't healed, and every night, the symbols spread, whispering words I don't understand. The hole in the field disappeared. When the sun came up and the villagers said there was no stone circle at all, the field returned to normal, but I knew something wasn't right. I went back to the library, searched for the book, but it had vanished, as if it had never existed. I tried to forget, but every full moon night, I see the faceless figure standing at the edge of the village, floating, watching me. Once I woke up with blood on my pillow, and the symbols on my hand had formed a perfect circle, just like the stone circle. I looked at my friends, the campfire nearly out. I told them that I no longer go out on full moon nights, but last week, I saw the cold light from the field, and the whispering called my name from the window. I still see the faceless figure in my dreams watching me. I pulled up my sleeve, revealing the symbols on my hand, now faintly glowing under the firelight. My friends gasped, and one whispered, "The moon is rising." I finished the story, but when I looked out toward the field, the silver light shimmered, just like that. I stood up, my heart pounding, because I knew the curse isn't over, and one day the moon will call me back. Our new house wasn't anything special, except for one detail that I couldn't stop thinking about. The door at the end of the hallway, always locked tight. I'm Liam, 13 years old, and we just moved into a new house. In the winter of 2023, My family moved into this old house with creaky wooden floors and walls that smelled musty. My parents called it a new opportunity, but I just felt it was cold, like it was hiding something. One night, I heard a light tapping from the door at the end of the hallway. The tapping wasn't loud, but it was steady, like someone tapping, their nails on the wood, stopping when I got close. I asked my parents, but they said there was no door locked. I didn't believe them because I had tried turning the doorknob. It didn't budge and no one knew where the key was. That night, I lay in bed, looking through the gap in the door at the dark hallway. In the dim light, I saw the door shake, slightly, as if someone was pushing from the other side. A cold draft poured out, carrying the smell of earth and burning metal. I turned on the flashlight and stepped into the hallway, but the tapping stopped. When I touched the doorknob, it was burning hot, as if it had just been heated in a fire. I pulled my hand back, and in the darkness, a shadow glided past the door as if waiting for me to open it. I couldn't stop thinking about the door, even though my parents said it was just an old house making noises. I decided to find a way to open the door at the end of the hallway. The next night, I sneaked into the hallway, carrying a paperclip to try and pick the lock. The flashlight beam landed on the door, and I saw small scratches around the doorknob, as if they had been scratched with nails. My heart raced, but I still tried, and the lock clicked open. It unlocked. I pushed the door open and found a dark, cold room. The air inside was heavy, like standing in a tomb. The flashlight beam swept across the dusty walls, covered with strange symbols carved deep into the wood. In the corner of the room, there was an old mirror with cracked glass, reflecting the light in a distorted way. I stepped in, and the door slammed shut behind me, even though there was no wind. I heard whispering from inside the room, but I couldn't make out the words. The whispering sounded like dozens of voices, calling my name. Liam. I turned around, and the mirror shook lightly, revealing an image, not of me, but of a faceless figure, tall and thin, standing right behind me. I screamed, dropping the flashlight, and the faceless figure disappeared, but the whispering grew louder, as if coming from the walls. I ran to the door, but it wouldn't open, and the symbols on the wall glowed brightly, as if bleeding. I knew I had stepped into something I shouldn't have touched. I pounded on the door, shouting for my parents, but no one answered. I felt something in the room, like it was watching me. The flashlight rolled under the floor, its light fading, and the symbols on the wall shone brighter, as if more were being written. I stepped back, tripping over the mirror, and it shook violently, as if about to break. In the glass, the faceless figure became clearer, its long arms reaching out toward me, and a voice rang in my head. Liam, open the gate! I saw the faceless figure move closer, but I couldn't run. I tried to look away, but my eyes were glued to the mirror, and the image inside changed. I saw myself, but with white eyes, my mouth whispering the words. A cold hand touched my neck, even though no one was behind me. I screamed, pushed the mirror, and it shattered. Shards of glass scattered across the floor. The whispering now sounded like a scream, and the walls trembled, as if something wanted to escape. Black liquid poured out from the cracks in the wall, smoking as it touched the floor, smelling like blood and damp earth. I ran to the door and slammed against it, and it swung open, but the hallway outside was distorted, stretching endlessly. The faceless figure stood at the end of the hallway, not moving, but I felt it pulling me back. I ran back to my room, locked the door, but the whispering continued, now coming from beneath the floor, as if it had entered the house. I knew it wanted me to return to the room. I hugged the pillow tightly, my heart pounding, as the whispering stopped. But the air still felt heavy. I tried to tell my parents, but they didn't believe me. They said there was no room at the end of the hallway, just an empty wall. I led them out, And indeed, the door was gone, as if it had never existed. But I knew it was real, because the scratch on my hand from pushing the mirror was still bleeding. That night I lay in my room, too scared to sleep. The floor trembled slightly, and the black liquid seeped through the crack in the door, smoking, carrying the smell of burning metal. I ran out of the house, but I could still hear the whispering. I ran into the yard, looked back, and saw the faceless figure standing at my window, looking down. The moonlight shone on it, making its black eye sockets glow brightly, as if pulling in the light. I went to the neighbor's house asking for help, but when the police checked, they found nothing. No door, no liquid, just an ordinary house. My parents said I was imagining things, that it wasn't real, but every night I see the symbols from the room etched into my skin, spreading like a spider's web, whispering words I don't understand. I never go near the hallway anymore, but I still feel it there. Now, when I walk past the hallway, I hear the light tapping from the empty wall. I fear that one day the door will appear again and the faceless figure will call me in. Yesterday afternoon, when I was walking along the riverbank near my house, a rusted iron box caught between the rocks made me stop in my tracks. I'm Ava, 16 years old, living next to a small river. The box was heavy, covered in moss, as if buried by the flowing water for years. I brought it home, thinking it was just an old discarded item, but when I opened it, a piece of old fabric, dyed red, carved with strange symbols, made me shudder. One night I heard whispering from the river. The whispering wasn't like the sound of waves. It was like dozens of voices, faint, calling my name from afar. I decided to go to the river to find out. That night, I grabbed a flashlight, stepped down to the riverbank, where the thick fog obscured the moonlight. The water was dark and slow, as if hiding something beneath the surface. When I held up the piece of fabric under the flashlight, the symbols on it glowed faintly, as if burned from within. A cold gust of wind blew through, carrying the smell of dead fish and damp earth. I heard the sound of water splashing, though the river was calm, and in the darkness, a figure, a tall, faceless being, stood on the water staring at me. I stepped back, tripped over a rock, and the piece of fabric fell into the river. The water surged as if swallowing the fabric, and the whispering grew louder, echoing in my head. Ava, you have called me. I ran back home, my heart pounding, but when I looked out the window, the faceless figure still stood there, hovering over the river as if waiting for me to return. The iron box on the table shook slightly, as if something inside wanted to escape. I knew I had touched something I shouldn't have. I couldn't sleep that night. The iron box haunted me. I found a piece of fabric near the river with strange symbols. The next morning, I took the fabric, retrieved from the riverbank after it had washed up, to the village library, hoping to find some clue. I found an old book, its leather cover worn, that spoke of the river's curse. It told of a blood ritual performed by the river centuries ago, binding an ancient entity beneath the water with symbols on fabric. I read about a legend connected to the river. The book warned that if blood touched the symbols, the entity would awaken. I shuddered as I read, because when I picked up the piece of fabric, my hand had been scratched by a stone, and my blood had soaked into it. I returned to the riverbank that afternoon, bringing the book. The water now looked murky, as if something was stirring beneath the surface. I shone the flashlight on the water's surface, and I saw small ripples, as if someone had thrown a stone, but there was no one around. I heard a scream from beneath the water, as if something was rising up. The scream wasn't human, but sounded like metal being bent, mixed with the sound of breaking bones. I stepped back, and a pale hand, covered in sharp claws, emerged from the water, trying to grab the fabric. I screamed, dropping the book, and the hand vanished, but the water boiled up, black smoke rising, carrying the smell of blood. The symbols on the fabric glowed brightly, and I felt my skin burn as if being carved into. I ran back home, but the whispering followed me, now clearer. Your blood is the key. When I locked my bedroom door, the iron box on the table opened, even though I hadn't touched it, and a drop of black liquid spilled out, corroding the wooden floor. I knew the river was calling me back. I locked myself in my room, but the whispering never stopped, as if seeping through the walls. I felt something from the river, as if it was calling me. I looked out the window, and the faceless figure stood on the river, hovering, its hands reaching toward my house. Under the moonlight, the surface of the water glowed, and red symbols appeared just like on the fabric, as if writing the curse. I tried to stop the whispering, but it grew louder. I took salt from the kitchen, scattered it around my room as my mom used to tell me to ward off evil. But the salt burned when it touched the floor, releasing black smoke. The iron box shook violently, and black liquid poured out, forming a circle around me. I screamed, hitting the box, but it didn't stop, and a voice rang in my head. You have opened the gate. I ran to the river, thinking I must return the fabric to end it. The water now looked like oil, pitch black, and the faceless figure stood in the middle of the river, not moving, but I felt it pulling me in. I saw the faceless figure clearer, standing on the water. I threw the fabric into the river, but the water boiled up, and dozens of skeletal hands reached out, grabbing my legs, cold as ice. I pulled away, falling to the riverbank, and I saw an image in the water. Not my reflection, but a distorted face, no eyes, whispering my name. Black smoke erupted from the river, and the faceless figure moved closer, its hand touching my shoulder. I felt my blood go cold, as if it was being drained. I screamed, ran back toward the village, but the screaming from the river chased after me, as if the whole river was coming to life. When I looked back, the faceless figure was still standing there, and the red symbols carved into my hand glowed brightly, as if trying to pull me into the water. I ran back home, locked the door, but the whispering now sounded like screaming in my head. I tried to tell my mom, but she didn't believe me. She said I had a fever, that I was delirious, but the symbols on my hand didn't disappear, and every night they spread, whispering words I couldn't understand. I poured holy water over my hand, as the priest suggested, but the water boiled, leaving burns. The river became strange after that night. The river returned to normal, but I knew something wasn't right. The villagers said fish had died, and the water smelled like blood. But no one saw the faceless figure, only me. I returned to the library, searching for the book, but it had vanished as if someone had taken it. Every night I see the faceless figure standing on the river, watching me through my window, and the iron box shakes, though I've buried it under the yard. One night, I woke up, finding blood on my pillow, and the symbols on my hand formed a perfect circle, just like the symbols in the box. I never go to the river anymore, but I still hear the whispering. I sealed the window shut, but the moonlight came through, shining on the wall, revealing a distorted face from the river. The screaming rang out, not from outside, but from within my chest, as if I had become a part of it. I ran to the priest's house seeking help, but when he read the prayers, blood dripped from my hand, and the faceless figure appeared behind, him whispering, "The gate is open." I ran outside, but the river was now closer, as if it was flowing toward my house. I still see the faceless figure in my dreams calling me. I fear one day the water will swallow me whole and the whispering will never stop. Last night I dreamed that I was standing in a dark room, the walls covered with scribbles red as blood, and in front of me was a large mirror, the glass cloudy, reflecting not me, but a faceless man, mouthing words as if calling my name. I am 18 years old, living in an old house that once belonged to my grandfather. When I woke up, my shirt was soaked with sweat, and I heard a creaking sound from the basement, like someone dragging something heavy across the floor. One night, I saw a strange image in the mirror, not my reflection. I turned on the light trying to shake off the dream, but the creaking continued, leading me to the basement. There, amidst the old junk, I found a small mirror, identical to the one in my dream, covered in dust, its wooden frame etched with strange symbols. I tried to learn more about the mirror. I brought it upstairs, my heart racing, and under the dim light the glass became faintly clear, revealing the faceless man, his white eyes standing in a dark room, just like in the dream. I stepped back, my hands trembling, and heard a whisper. "Ethan, look at me." The air grew cold, carrying the smell of burnt smoke. The mirror shook slightly, and I saw the symbols on the frame glow, as if being burned from within. I wanted to run, but my eyes were glued to the glass, and the man raised his hand, as if trying to pull me through. The creaking sound echoed again, now from the hallway, even though I lived alone. I ran to check, but only found darkness and a new scratch on the wall, deep as if carved with a knife. When I turned back, the mirror was no longer on the table but hanging on the wall, and the man was standing closer, his lips mouthing my name. I locked the mirror in the cupboard, bolting it shut, but the whispering still echoed, as if coming from inside my head, repeating the dream from the night before. I knew the dream wasn't just a dream. It had led me to something I shouldn't have touched. The dream kept repeating in my mind, and the mirror felt like an invitation to death. I found an old notebook talking about mirrors. I sifted through my grandfather's papers and found a leather-bound book detailing the blood mirror, an object from an ancient ritual, imprisoning an entity with blood and a curse. He warned that blood would awaken the mirror, and I shuddered, recalling the scratch on my hand when I held the mirror the night before, the blood soaking into the glass. I heard the whispering from the mirror, calling my name. The whispers now didn't just come at night, but even when I was at school, like dry leaves mixed with the sound of rusted metal. "Ethan, you belong to me." I tried to throw the mirror into the river, but when I returned home, it was on the bed, the glass, glowing brightly, revealing the faceless man holding a rusty knife, its blade as red as fresh blood. Standing in the dark room from my dream, I tried to destroy it, taking a hammer from the shed, but when I raised it, I saw an image, not of me, but of a ritual. Blood pouring on the glass, screams echoing, and the faceless shadow appearing. I fell down, and a cold breath whispered in my ear, though no one was there. I felt something in the house, as if it was watching me. The floor was covered with fresh scratches, as if carved by a knife leading to my room. When I opened my room door, the mirror was hanging on the wall, though I hadn't placed it there. The glass shook violently, and the man stepped closer, the knife scraping against the glass, as if trying to cut through. I pulled the curtain over the mirror, but the whispering grew louder, and the wall trembled slightly, as if something was moving inside. I read the notebook again, and the last line said, "The mirror cannot break, it has chosen you." I tried to burn the mirror, but the flames flared into black smoke, smelling of blood, and the mirror shone brightly, as if swallowing the flames. Every time I looked into it, I saw myself in the glass, my eyes white, standing beside the faceless man, as if I was fading into him. The whispering now felt like a knife slicing into my head, relentless. I tried to break the mirror, but it wouldn't shatter. I hit it with the hammer, but the glass shook violently, and an invisible force pushed me down, blood from my hand dripping onto the glass. The mirror shone brightly, and the faceless man stepped out of the dark room within the mirror, standing before me, the rusty knife only inches from my throat, its blade red, like it had just cut someone. I saw the faceless shadow more clearly, as if real. I screamed and stepped back, but my room twisted. The walls cracked open, leaking black liquid that smelled like burnt flesh. The mirror shook violently, and I saw dozens of faceless shadows in the glass, hovering, their hands reaching for me, pulling me in. The whispering now screamed, "Ethan, your blood is the key." I felt something pulling me into the mirror. I ran out into the hallway, but the mirror appeared everywhere, on doors, walls, and the floor, reflecting the faceless man, his lips mouthing, and I felt my name being torn from my mouth. The stairs stretched on endlessly, and black liquid poured up, freezing my feet. A skeletal hand reached out from the mirror, gripping my wrist, pulling me hard. I yanked free, ran into the kitchen, grabbed salt and holy water, but the salt burned red, and the holy water boiled, splashing onto my hands, leaving burns. The mirror was now everywhere in the house, and the faceless man stood in every reflection, his rusty knife dripping blood. I saw an image in my mind. I was in the mirror, no longer Ethan, but the faceless shadow, holding a knife, staring out. I slammed the front door, but it was locked tight, and the screams from the mirror echoed throughout the house, as if the house was coming to life to trap me. The largest mirror in the living room shone brightly, and the faceless man stepped out, no longer in the glass, but right behind me, his cold breath on my neck. I turned around, screamed, but he melted into the darkness, leaving behind the whisper, "You can't escape." I collapsed on the floor, my heart pounding, the whispering still echoing in my head. I ran out of the house, but still saw the shadow in the mirror. I slammed the front door and ran into the yard, but every window gleamed, reflecting the mirror, and the faceless shadow stood in every frame, staring at me. The moonlight shone on the house, making the symbols from the mirror appear on the outside wall, as if rewriting the curse from the dream. I tried to tell everyone, but no one believed me. I called friends, the police, but they said the house was normal, no strange mirrors, no scratches. I went back to the house and the small mirror was in the yard, not where I had left it. I smashed it with a rock, but the glass leaked black, liquid, corroding the grass, smelling like blood. The house returned to normal, but I knew something wasn't right. That night I slept at a friend's house, but woke up with blood on my hands, and the symbols from the mirror carved into my skin, spreading like a web, whispering words I didn't understand. I went back home, searched for my grandfather's notebook, but it was gone, as if it had never existed. I never looked into a mirror again, but I still felt it there. Every night I dreamt of the faceless shadow holding a rusty knife, whispering, "You are me." Last week I saw the reflection in the window, not mine, but the faceless man, the knife at my throat. I smashed the window, but blood poured from my hands, and the symbols on my skin glowed brightly, as if calling him. I ran to the church, seeking help from the priest, but when he prayed, blood dripped from the walls and the faceless shadow appeared, whispering, "The gate never closes." I left the town, but every reflective surface, windows, screens, even water, showed the faceless shadow, staring at me. I still hear the whispering in my dreams, calling me. I fear that one day, the mirror will pull me in, and I will become the faceless shadow holding the knife trapped in the glass, whispering the next person's name just as the dream had warned from the beginning. The phone rang at midnight, the screen displaying an unfamiliar number. A crackling voice from the delivery service announced, "Your package has been delivered." I interrupted, saying I hadn't ordered anything, but the person chuckled softly and hung up. My name is Mia, and I live alone in a small apartment. The next morning, a brown paper-wrapped package was sitting by my door, with no label, no sender's address, only my name written in red ink, with shaky handwriting. I received a strange package from a delivery driver. I opened the door, and he was standing there, his jacket torn, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He acted strangely, kicking the door hard when I took too long to open it. When he looked up, his eyes were bright red like blood, staring straight at me without blinking. "You'll need this," he said, his voice deep, like it was coming from underground, and then he left before I could ask anything. I brought the package inside, my heart racing. Inside was an old wooden box, rusted lock, emitting the smell of burnt metal. As I touched it, the window shook slightly, even though there was no wind, and a shadow swept across the glass, as if someone was standing outside, looking in. I feared he would come back because he knew my address. The phone rang again, no number displayed, only heavy breathing and the crackling voice. "Open it, Mia." I locked the door, but footsteps echoed in the hallway. I didn't dare open the box, but the whispering from the call kept ringing in my head. I tried to find information about the delivery driver, but there were no leads. I checked the hallway, camera, but the footage was all static except for one brief moment. A shadow standing in front of my door, its red eyes glowing in the dark. I called the delivery service, but they said no driver had delivered anything to my address the night before. The wooden box on the table shook lightly, as if something inside was moving. I grabbed a knife, pried open the lock, and a rush of cold air poured out, smelling of damp earth and blood. Inside was an old, faded photo of a group of people standing in front of my apartment, their eyes scratched out. In the corner of the photo, there was handwritten text, "Mia, return it." My heart pounded. I had never seen this photo before, but the person standing in the middle looked like the driver, even though the photo was clearly from many years ago. That night, the lights in the house flickered, and there was a slow knocking at the door, as if someone was testing the handle. I didn't dare open it, thinking it was him. I looked through the peephole, and a pair of red eyes stared back at me, unblinking, then disappeared. The photo on the table was now soaking wet, as if it had been submerged in water, and the pale faces in the photo blinked, whispering my name. I shoved the box into the cupboard, but the knocking started again, now from inside the house, as if someone was already there. The knocking now sounded like the beat of my heart, echoing throughout the apartment. I felt the delivery driver was still somewhere nearby. I pulled the curtain shut, locked all the doors, but the lights went out, and in the darkness, I heard heavy breathing, as if right behind me. I turned on the flashlight and swept across the room, finding the photo from the box on the floor, even though I had put it in the cupboard. The pale faces were now staring straight at me, and the word Mia on the photo was glowing red, as if written in blood. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, but the phone rang again. No caller ID. The crackling voice said, "If you don't return it, I'll take it." I screamed, threw the phone, but it kept ringing and the breathing grew louder, as if coming from inside the walls. I was terrified because I didn't know what he wanted, but I felt he would return. I looked out the window and saw the figure standing under the streetlight, baseball cap hiding his face, red eyes shining, staring up at me. The front door shook violently, as if kicked, and a pale hand slipped through the mail slot, holding a piece of paper. "Open the box, or I'll come in." I screamed, pushed the sofa to block the door, but the paper on the floor was now covered in red symbols, spreading out from the photo. The wooden box in the cupboard burst open, and black liquid leaked out, steaming, smelling of blood. The figure outside the window disappeared, but footsteps echoed in the hallway, closer now, and I knew he had entered the house. I clutched the knife tightly, my heart pounding as the footsteps stopped. Though there was no clear evidence, I still believed he had bad intentions. The apartment was silent, but the air was heavy, like something was waiting. I looked at the photo, and the pale faces in it were now whispering louder, saying, "Return it, Mia." The wooden box on the floor shook violently, and black liquid spilled out, forming a circle around me, steaming red. The phone rang again, and the crackling voice said, "You can't escape." I screamed, slammed the phone, but the screen lit up, showing the driver's face, his red eyes staring at me. The window shattered, and the figure was standing right there, no longer outside, but in my room, a rusted knife in his hand, dripping blood. I ran to the door, but it was locked tight, and the red symbols from the photo spread up the walls as if writing a curse. I ran to the balcony, called for help, but when the police arrived, they found nothing. No box, no photo, just a normal apartment. I still feared he would return. Every night I hear the knocking at the door, and red symbols appear on my skin, whispering my name. I moved out, but last week a new package arrived. No label, only my name, written in red ink. I didn't open it, but the breathing started again from inside the house, as if he had never left. In a quiet afternoon, while rummaging through the attic for old items to sell, I stumbled upon a dusty box. Inside was an old cassette tape with a faded handwritten label, "Do not listen." Curious, I brought it into the house and searched for my father's old cassette player. When I pressed play, a heavy breath sounded, as though someone was trying to breathe through dust, followed by a deep growl, not human, like something from a deep cave, sending a chill down my spine. Since I was young, I had heard heavy breathing through the answering machine. These sounds, starting from our old house in the suburbs, never had any words, just breathing, and sometimes a growl, like a wild animal trapped. I stopped the tape, my heart racing, but the machine automatically started again, repeating the growl, and the lights in the room flickered. This phenomenon repeated over the years, even when I moved houses. I took the tape down to the basement, where the old answering machine was still covered in dust. When I plugged it in, the machine powered on by itself, emitting the familiar breathing, but this time it was mixed with a broken voice. "Liam, you hear me?" I had never told anyone my name through that machine. The air grew cold with the smell of burnt metal, and in the dark, I saw a red streak of light flash from the wall mirror, like eyes staring at me. I turned off the machine, but the growl persisted, now in my head, pulling me back to those childhood nights when I hugged my pillow, scared of the answering machine. The tape on the table vibrated slightly, as if urging me to listen again. And I knew I had touched something I shouldn't have. I couldn't sleep that night, the growl from the tape haunting me. I once thought it was just a prank, but the growling through the phone never stopped. I went through old diaries, remembering the times the answering machine played heavy breathing when I was 10, then 15, and even last year, despite changing numbers. I searched online, typing growling answering machine, and found an old forum with dozens of people sharing the same experience. Breathing, growling, no source. I found similar stories online, but no one could explain it. One post mentioned a voice from nowhere related to an ancient ritual that traps an entity with sound, but if you listen too long, it will find you. I went back to the basement and plugged the tape into the cassette player. The breathing was now clearer, like someone standing behind me, and the growl mixed with the sound of metal scraping, like claws on stone. I found a letter in the tape box, written by my father, warning, "Do not let it know your name." My heart pounded. My father had died 10 years ago. He couldn't have written this letter. The basement lights flickered out, and in the darkness, I heard slow footsteps on the wooden floor, even though I lived alone. I turned on the flashlight, scanned around, and saw deep claw marks on the wall, as if carved with a knife. The tape played again, and the voice echoed, not from the machine, but from the air. "Liam, I see you." I ran upstairs and locked the door, but the breathing followed me, and the mirror in the room glowed brightly, revealing a shadowy figure without a face, with red eyes glowing, as if waiting for me to answer. The growl now not only echoed in my head but seemed to shake the whole house. I tried to delete the messages, but the breathing still echoed every night. I smashed the tape, but the shards on the floor vibrated, letting out a louder growl, as if from beneath the earth. The answering machine switched on by itself, even though it wasn't plugged in, and the breathing mixed with a scream. "Liam, you belong to me." I yanked the power cord, but the machine still ran, and the mirror in the room trembled, reflecting the faceless figure, red eyes glowing, hands reaching out, as if wanting to pull me in. I ran outside, but the breathing followed, as if coming from every corner of the street. I heard the growl through the phone, even when no one called. I called my friends, asking about the answering machine, but they couldn't hear anything, only I was haunted. I returned home and saw claw marks all over the walls, leading to the basement. The answering machine was glowing brightly, and a pale hand reached out from the mirror, its sharp claws scratching the air, leaving burning marks. I screamed, threw the mirror down, but it didn't break, just shone brighter, and the faceless figure stepped closer, its mouth silently mouthing my name. I took salt and sprinkled it around the room, but the salt started to smoke black, smelling like blood. The phone rang, with no caller ID, and the growl echoed, as if right behind me. I ran upstairs, but the door was locked tight and the heavy footsteps rang beneath the floor, like someone was climbing up. The mirror in the room glowed brightly, and the faceless figure stood right there, no longer in the glass but in front of me, its red eyes staring into mine, and I felt my breath being sucked out, as if it wanted to take my name forever. I collapsed, my heart pounding, the growl tearing through my head. I didn't know why the growl was targeting me, but it didn't stop. I burned the remaining tape, but black smoke billowed up, forming a face with no eyes, whispering my name. The answering machine played a scream, even though it had shattered, and mirrors all over the house glowed, reflecting the faceless figure, holding sharp claws, dripping blood. I ran outside, called the police, but they saw nothing. No claw marks, no tape, just me, panicked. I still hear the heavy breathing through the answering machine, even though I've changed numbers. I moved away, but every night the phone rings, no caller ID, just the growl and breathing. Red symbols appear on my skin, as if carved from within, whispering words I don't understand. I found the forum again, and there was a new post. If it knows your name, it won't leave. I changed my name, burned my papers, but the growl still echoes, now from within my chest, as if I've become part of it. Last week, I received a package with no label, containing an old answering machine, identical to my father's. I smashed it, but that night the growl echoed in the room and the mirror glowed brightly, showing the faceless figure. closer than ever, its claws brushing my shoulder. I ran to the church for help, but as the priest recited prayers, blood leaked from the walls and the growl echoed, "Liam, the gate is open." I left the city, but every time I hear the phone ring, the breathing is still there, and I fear that one day I will answer, and the faceless shadow will pull me into the void, where the growl never stops. On a rainy evening, I climbed up to the attic to check for leaks, and among the dusty pile of old items, I found a fabric painting in a rotting wooden frame. It depicted a blurry figure, faceless, standing in a dark hallway, its hand outstretched, as if trying to grab someone. What sent a chill down my spine was that the hallway looked exactly like my house, and the figure reminded me of something from my childhood, deep and terrifying. From the age of 4 to 8, I had recurring nightmares about a faceless figure chasing me inside the house. The dreams always started with heavy footsteps, followed by the figure appearing, faceless, silent, chasing me down an endless hallway, and I would wake up, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I brought the painting downstairs and placed it on the table, and under the light, the lines seemed to move, the figure appearing to come closer. In my nightmares, I often sleepwalked, turning on every light in the house. I remember my mother telling me how I used to stand by the window with wide eyes whispering something even though the next morning I wouldn't remember a thing. That night, I couldn't sleep, kept staring at the painting, and when the wind blew through, I heard scratching sounds on the roof, like fingernails tapping against the tiles. Recently, I've been hearing running sounds on the roof at night. I went out to check but found nothing, only a streak of black dust on the window like a burned handprint which I couldn't clean off. The painting now haunts me. I took a photo of it and sent it to an art friend for analysis, and she said the style seemed ancient, but the colors were strange, like dried blood mixed in. That night, I had the same old nightmare, but this time, the faceless figure didn't just chase me, it whispered my name. Nora. I woke up, the room's light blinding me even though I hadn't turned it on, and the painting was on the floor, not on the table. I felt as if something was watching me. I checked the doors. They were locked tight, but the scratching sounds on the roof grew closer, like something crawling on the tiles, and a cold breath brushed my neck even though I was alone. I knew the painting had awakened something, and it wasn't just in my dreams anymore. I couldn't shake the painting from my mind. The figure's lines were carved into my eyes. When I was young, after my nightmares, I discovered 2 round scars on my back. I never knew where they came from. I remember my mom took me to a doctor, but no one could explain it. No cuts, no injuries, just 2 circular marks, as if burned, deep and hollow. I went through old documents, searching for clues, and found a handwritten letter from my grandmother, written before she passed. "Don't let it see you, Nora." My heart raced. She had never mentioned anything about a faceless figure or dreams. I hung the painting back in the attic, hoping to forget it. But that night, the running on the roof grew louder, like more than one set of feet, and the window rattled violently, as though something was scratching from the outside. I called a roofer, but they found no trace, only saying the tiles had deep scratches, as if etched with metal claws. I started recording at night, and in the audio, amid the wind, I heard a whisper. "Nora, I know where you are." I replayed it, and the figure from my dream appeared in my mind, clearer now, holding something sharp, gleaming like a needle. I searched online for information about recurring nightmares and found a forum discussing the Marked One, an entity that leaves scars and chases people through dreams. But if it knows your name, it will come into the real world. The post was deleted as soon as I read it, as if someone didn't want me to know. That night I placed a knife under my pillow, but when I slept I dreamt of the figure standing at the foot of my bed, eyes glowing red, and the 2 scars on my back burned, as though they were being seared again. I woke up to see black dust, marks on the floor, leading to the window, and the painting was downstairs again with the figure now drawn even closer, its hand touching the frame, as if trying to step out. The running on the roof now echoed every night, like a second heartbeat. In the house, I felt like I was being watched, though I couldn't see anyone. I installed cameras outside, but the footage was full of static, except for one brief moment. The faceless figure, standing under the tree, looking up at my window. I called my friends, telling them about the dream, but they thought I was just stressed, not believing me. I went back to the attic and burned the painting, but the flames flared with black smoke smelling of blood, and the figure appeared in the smoke, its red eyes boring into me. I ran downstairs, locked the door, but now the scratching came from within the walls, like something crawling inside. The nightmares from my childhood felt like they were coming to life again. I checked my back in the mirror, and the 2 scars were glowing bright as if freshly carved, leaking black fluid and emitting smoke. The phone rang with no number showing, and the whisper came, "Nora, I've marked you." I screamed, threw the phone, but it kept ringing, and the window shattered, cold wind rushing in, bringing with it a scream that was not human. I took salt and scattered it around the room, but the salt burned red, and the figure from my dream stepped out of the dark corner, no longer just in my dreams, but standing right in front of me holding a sharp needle, aimed at my back. I ran up to the attic, but the stairs stretched on endlessly, and the running from the roof now echoed beneath the floor, chasing me. The mirror in the room blazed bright, showing the faceless figure, and the 2 scars on my back burned fiercely, as though the needle was piercing me again. I collapsed, screaming, but its roar drowned everything out, and I felt my name ripped from my chest. I woke up on the floor, unsure how much time had passed, but the house was silent, just the sound of rain. I still felt watched, and the running on the roof returned. I called the police, but they found nothing. No smoke, no dust marks, just me shaking. I checked my back, and the 2 scars were now deeper, as if recarved, with red symbols appearing around them, whispering words I couldn't understand. I moved away, but every night I dreamt of the figure, closer now, with the sharp needle in hand, and the running on the roof echoed on my new house. Last week, I found a piece of fabric in a suitcase, like the old painting, but this one only depicted 2 red round marks, just like my scars. I burned it, but the black smoke flared again, and the whisper echoed in the room. "Nora, you can't escape." I ran to the church for help, but as the priest recited prayers, blood leaked from the walls and the figure appeared, its red eyes staring at me. I changed my name, left the city, but every time I look in the mirror, I see the faceless figure behind me, and the 2 scars burn, as if reminding me I've been marked. The running on the roof still echoes, and I know it will never stop. I fear one day, the dream will no longer be a dream, and the figure will touch me, its sharp needle, stabbing deep, pulling me into the darkness where the scream never ends. At sunset, the abandoned industrial area was drenched in a sickly red hue, like blood splattered on rusted walls. On the corner of a stone-filled dirt road stood an old, lonely public phone, its peeling paint revealing dull gray metal underneath, like an open wound. The wind howled through the shattered windows of the warehouse, carrying with it the scent of burning metal and an indistinct whisper. Lily and Emma, both 13 years old, decided to take a shortcut through this dangerous area to get home early. They walked quickly, holding hands, trying to joke to drown out the fear that crept in as darkness enveloped them. But as they passed the phone, it suddenly rang, its sharp, cold sound slicing through the silence like an invitation from the darkness. Lily stopped, looked at Emma, and they exchanged a glance of curiosity mixed with unease. Emma stepped forward, picked up the receiver, but all she heard was heavy breathing, deep and slow, as if someone was standing right on the other end of the line. She put the receiver down, her heart racing, but the phone rang again, louder this time, as if urging them to answer. A man suddenly appeared, stumbling right in front of them, dropping a shiny metal object. He was wearing a tattered coat, a cap that obscured his face, and when he looked up, his eyes were glowing red like blood, staring at the girls unblinking, as if he wanted to carve their image into his mind. He screamed in a hoarse voice and lunged toward them. Lily screamed, "Run!" They dashed through a pile of rubble, tripping over stones, their hearts pounding as his heavy footsteps echoed behind them like drums beating in their chests. They turned into a narrow alley, hiding behind a trash can, their breaths coming in gasps as they tried to stifle their sobs. The man stopped a few meters away, scanning the area, muttering something in a low, grumbling voice, like a curse from below the earth. Lily peeked out and saw what he had dropped, a folding knife, its blade stained with red like dried blood gleaming under the weak sunset. Emma trembled, whispering, "He saw our faces, Lily." The air was icy, carrying the scent of burning metal, and a faint scraping sound echoed from the nearby warehouse, like a knife dragging along the wall, slow and sharp, as if it wanted to prolong the terror. They ran, hearts racing, and called the police. When the police arrived, they swept their flashlights across the dark alley and found the knife on the ground, its blade still shining. But there was no trace of the man. One officer frowned and said sternly, "This area isn't safe, go home right now." But Lily looked at Emma, and they both knew he had memorized them, not just their faces, but the fear in their eyes. That night at Lily's house, she couldn't sleep, her mind racing with thoughts of his red eyes and the scraping sound. She checked the window and found a deep scratch, like it had been carved with a sharp knife, and a small red streak on the window frame, like dried blood, causing her heart to tighten. The next morning, Emma called, her voice trembling. "I saw a shadow outside last night, Lily, a cap like his." They met at the library, carrying an unspoken fear, determined to learn more about the industrial area. Flipping through dusty old newspapers, they found an article that made their blood run cold. A series of disappearances in the area, from children to adults, with no trace, just rumors of a man with fire eyes. The article was missing the last part, as if someone had deliberately hidden the truth, but a handwritten note in the margin made Lily shiver. "He doesn't stop." They sat in silence, trying to process the information. Lily remembered the public phone, the heavy breathing in the receiver, and the feeling that it had called them there, like a trap. Emma whispered, "We shouldn't have picked up, Lily." They decided to return to the industrial area, despite their fear, to search for clues. Under the morning sun, the area still felt terrifying, with dark warehouses and the wind howling like whispers. Near the phone, they noticed large, unusual footprints in the dirt, deep and wide, leading into a warehouse. On the wall, a piece of paper was pinned up, with red ink written, "You've heard me." Lily picked up the paper, her hand shaking, and a scraping sound echoed from inside the warehouse like a knife scratching metal, slowly, as if it wanted them to know he was waiting. Emma pulled Lily back. He knows we've come back. They ran home, their hearts pounding, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave, like the red eyes were following them. That night, Lily heard slow footsteps outside the alley, and her window rattled, as if someone was trying to push it open. She checked, seeing a new red streak on the doorknob like dried blood on a knife blade. Emma sent a text. "I dreamed of him, Lily. He was standing in front of my house." Lily peered through the curtain and saw, under the streetlight, the shadow of a person standing still, his cap obscuring his face, his red eyes gleaming as if waiting for them to make a mistake. She pulled the curtain closed, her heart pounding, but the scraping sound echoed again, now from inside the wall, as if he was closer, as if he was everywhere. Lily couldn't sleep, her mind racing with thoughts of his red eyes and the blood-stained knife. She rummaged through the closet, searching for an old notebook from her father, who had worked in the industrial area before he passed away. In it, a handwritten line made her blood run cold. "Don't let the knife touch the ground. It calls him." Her father had never mentioned the area, but the note felt like a warning from the past, as if he knew something horrible. Emma came over carrying a small metal piece she had found near her house, a part of the knife, engraved with strange symbols, gleaming despite the lack of light. When they touched it, they both heard a whisper from afar. "Lily." Emma. The air was icy, and a shadow slid across the window, red eyes glowing under the cap, as if reminding them that he had not left and would never leave. They sat in Lily's room, holding each other, trying not to look outside. They knew he had seen their faces, knew their names, and that made everything even more terrifying. Lily remembered his red eyes, not like a human's, like something beyond this world. Emma whispered, "We have to do something, Lily." "He won't stop." They decided to find a trustworthy adult but didn't know where to start. The police didn't believe them, thinking they were imagining things because of fear. But the scratches on the window, the red streak on the doorknob, and the scraping sounds at night were not hallucinations. They were too real, too close. They returned to the library, searching through more documents for any clues about the industrial area. An old book, its leather cover worn, mentioned an ancient ritual in this region, related to metal and blood, used to imprison an unnamed entity, something that didn't belong to this world. The book said, if the marked object falls, it will awaken, and anyone who sees it will be hunted forever. Lily shuddered, remembering the knife falling from the man's hand, the clink sounding like the beginning of a curse. Emma looked at her, eyes red from lack of sleep. "We've seen him, Lily, now what?" They left the library, but when they stepped outside, a shadow stood far away under the tree, its red eyes gleaming in the evening light, as if confirming they had no way out. They ran back to Lily's house, locked the door, drew the curtains, but the scraping sound echoed again, louder now, like the knife cutting into wood, slow and deliberate. Lily checked the metal piece Emma had brought, and under the light the symbols on it shone brightly, as if burned from the inside, emitting the smell of dried blood, making her nauseous. She set it down, but the metal piece trembled slightly, as if it had a life of its own, and a whisper echoed in the room. "You belong to me." Emma screamed, throwing the metal piece out the window, but it landed on the floor outside, and the footsteps outside the alley grew louder, as if he was getting closer than ever. Lily looked out through the curtain, seeing the shadow standing right outside the house, the knife gleaming in his hand, his red eyes burning bright, like a promise that he would return, not just today, but forever. Lily grabbed Emma's hand, both trembling, trying to stay calm despite the fear seeping into every breath. The scraping slowed, but didn't stop, like he was playing with them, stretching the moment before he struck. Lily remembered her father's note in the notebook. "Don't let the knife touch the ground." She wondered if the knife falling that day was the beginning of everything, or just part of a larger trap. Emma whispered, her voice shaky. "We have to give it back, Lily. Give it back to him." But how could they return it when he wasn't human? When his red eyes seemed to look through their souls? They sat in the dark, hearing the wind howl through the window, and every small sound felt like his footsteps coming closer, like a reminder that he had chosen them and would never let go. Lily woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. The image of the red eyes burned into her mind. They suspected the man had bad intentions, but they didn't know exactly what. She went downstairs to check the window and found a deeper scratch, like the knife had scraped several times in the darkness, and a new red streak, like dried blood, smeared across the window frame. Emma came over early in the morning, her eyes dark from lack of sleep. "I heard footsteps outside, Lily. He's still here." They sat in the room, trying to come up with a plan, but fear felt like a heavy shadow weighing down on both of them. They decided to return to the library, bringing the metal piece Emma had found, hoping to uncover more clues. Digging through the old newspapers, they found another article about the industrial area, telling of a disappearance that occurred 20 years ago. The victim had left behind a folding knife, its blade stained with blood, exactly like the one they had seen that day. The article had been blacked out in a section, as if someone had tried to hide the truth, but a handwritten note in the margin made Emma shudder. "He takes blood to remember." Lily and Emma could not forget the man's eyes. They compared the metal piece to a picture in an old book and recognized the symbols on it as an ancient emblem related to a ritual that trapped entities with blood and metal. The book read, "Anyone who touches the marked object will be seen by it, and it will never forget." Lily shivered, remembering the moment the knife fell, the clink sounding like the beginning of a curse. Emma whispered, "We touched it, Lily." They left the library, but as they stepped outside, a shadow stood under the tree, the cap obscuring its face, the red eyes glowing in the twilight. Emma grabbed Lily's hand and they ran back, but the footsteps followed them, slow, as if he didn't need to hurry because he knew they wouldn't escape. That night, the scraping sounds echoed throughout Lily's house, from the window to the walls, as if he was surrounding them from all sides. She checked the metal piece, and under the light the symbols on it shone brightly, as if burned from the inside, emitting the smell of dried blood, making her nauseous. Emma screamed when she touched it and a whisper echoed in the room. "You belong to me." They tried to burn the metal piece, but the flames flared up with black smoke, forming the face of a person with no eyes, whispering their names, the voice deep as if coming from underground. The window shook violently, and a pale hand slipped through the gap, scratching the glass, leaving behind black burn marks. Lily screamed, pulling Emma to the back of the house, but the footsteps still followed, as if they were coming from the air, as if he was everywhere. They decided to find someone who knew about the industrial area and remembered Mr. Tom, an old worker who had retired after working there. He lived on the outskirts in a small house full of rusted tools like remnants of the past. When they told him about the man, he turned pale, his hands shaking as he held a cup of tea. "Don't go back to that area. The knife is a curse." He handed them an old piece of paper with the address of a secret warehouse where the ritual had once taken place. He warned them, "He's not human. He's something trapped and the knife is the door. Lily and Emma left, holding the piece of paper in their fear. But when they looked back, Mr. Tom stood still outside in the yard, his red eyes glowing, as if controlled by something other than himself. They returned to the industrial area, their hearts pounding, carrying flashlights and Mr. Tom's piece of paper. Near the warehouse he had pointed to, they found unusual large footprints, deep and wide, leading into the darkness. On the door of the warehouse, a fresh red streak like blood just spilled, and a knife was deeply embedded in the wood, vibrating gently as if alive. Lily touched it, and a whisper echoed, not from the knife, but from the air. "You've chosen." Emma pulled her back, but the door of the warehouse swung open, revealing a dark corridor, and at the end of the corridor, the figure stood there, its red eyes glowing brightly, the knife gleaming in its hand, as if inviting them to enter. They ran back, tripping over stones, the scraping sounds following them, as if the knife was cutting through the air. When they reached Lily's house, a red piece of paper lay in front of the door, the wet ink written, "I see you." Lily locked the door, pulled the curtain shut, but the footsteps rang outside the alley, slow, as if he knew they couldn't escape. Emma cried, "What did we do wrong, Lily?" They opened the piece of paper Mr. Tom gave them and saw a drawing of a red circle, like the ritual in the book, with the words, "Return the knife or blood." Lily remembered the first knife and the burning sensation in her hand, as if it had been carved. She checked and saw a small scar in the shape of a knife newly appeared, glowing red like blood. Emma had one too, on her neck, glowing as if it had been burned. They sat in the room, holding each other, trying to come up with a plan. Lily searched through her father's old notebook and found another note. "If the knife falls, the curse begins." She shivered, wondering if her father had known about this ritual, if he had ever seen the red eyes. Emma whispered, "We have to return it, Lily, before he takes us." But how could they return it when he was always near, when every scraping sound was a reminder that he had chosen them? They decided to go back to Mr. Tom's house, but when they arrived, the house was empty, except for a knife on the table, engraved with the names Lily and Emma, gleaming brightly like his eyes. They ran back, locked the door, but the footsteps never stopped, as if he had crossed through the darkness. Lily tried calling the police, but the line only had the "I" sound of heavy breathing, just like in the public phone, deep and slow, as if he was listening to them. She looked out through the curtain and saw the shadow standing right outside the house, the knife gleaming in its hand, and a red streak spreading across the door like blood flowing. Emma screamed, "He's here, Lily!" The scraping now echoed from inside the house as if he had entered, as if he had become a part of their home. They hugged each other, hearing the whisper, "You can't escape." Lily knew they had been marked not just by the knife, but by their very fear, and he would never leave. They sat in the dark, trying to stay calm, but each scraping sound was a knife into their hearts. Lily remembered the moment they picked up the phone, the heavy breathing, and the knife falling. All of it felt like a trap leading them into the curse. Emma whispered, "We have to face him, Lily, or he'll follow us forever." But how could they face him when he wasn't human, when his red eyes seemed to pierce their souls? They held hands, hearing the wind howl through the window, knowing that tonight he would be closer, and every step of his was a promise that the blood would have to pay. The scratching now echoed like a heartbeat, resonating throughout Lily's house, from the windows to the walls, as if he wanted them to know he was there, always there. The police said they couldn't find the man, but Lily and Emma still felt the fear. They set up a small security camera outside, hoping to capture any trace, anything that could prove he wasn't just a figment of their imagination. But when they checked the footage the next morning, all they saw was white static, and amidst the wind, a whisper. "Lily, Emma, come to me." The camera lay shattered on the ground, the wires burned, and next to it was a new knife, just like the first, engraved with L and E in tiny letters, gleaming like his eyes. Emma cried, "He knows our names, Lily." Lily grabbed Emma's hand, trying to stay calm, but fear seeped into every breath. They decided to find someone who knew about the industrial area and remembered the elderly woman who lived nearby, known for telling mysterious stories that children feared. They went to her house, a small wooden cottage, the windows covered in dust, and the smell of cigarettes clung to the walls. The old woman looked at them, her eyes cloudy as if seeing through them. "He marks you when the knife touches the ground." She handed them an old piece of newspaper, recounting an ancient ritual in the industrial area that used blood and metal to imprison an unnamed entity, something that didn't belong to this world. If the marked object falls, it awakens, and whoever sees it will be hunted forever. Lily shivered, thinking that the man would return. The old woman took their hands, her fingernails lightly scraping their skin, and whispered, "Burn the knife, but be careful. He doesn't let go easily." When they left, Lily turned back, startled to see her eyes flashing red, as if controlled by something, as if he was already inside everyone they met. They returned to the industrial area, their hearts pounding, carrying flashlights, salt, and the newspaper the old woman had given them. Near an old warehouse, they saw a trap door, rusted shut, but unusual large footprints led into it, deep and wide, as if not human. Lily pushed the door open, and a blast of cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of dried blood, causing Emma to hold her breath. Inside the basement, they found a red circle drawn on the floor, made with a sticky substance, like dried blood, and dozens of knives embedded around it, their blades gleaming softly, vibrating as if alive. Lily felt the man was near. A sharp, cold screech echoed, and the shadow of the figure appeared at the end of the hallway, its red eyes glowing brightly, the knife gleaming in its hand, as if inviting them closer. Emma screamed, throwing salt toward him, but the salt rose in black smoke, and he stepped forward slowly, whispering their names in a deep voice as if from beneath the earth. "Lily, Emma." They ran deeper into the basement, tripping over rocks, the sound of his footsteps never stopping, as if echoing from every wall, as if he was the very darkness itself. Lily saw an old wooden box in the corner of the basement, covered in dust, its lock rusted shut. She opened it, finding photos of the industrial area, blurry faces, and one drawing of the shadowy figure, with red eyes, just like him, just like their nightmare. Beneath the photos, in red ink, it was written, "Marked forever." Lily shivered, remembering the first knife that fell, the clink like opening a door. She checked her hand and saw a scar shape, like a knife, deeper now, glowing red like blood. Emma also had a scar on her neck, glowing like it had just been burned. The screaming from the end of the basement drowned out all other sounds, and the walls trembled violently, as if they were about to collapse, as if he wanted to pull the whole basement down with them. They hugged each other, trying to find a way out, but the basement felt like a maze, the hallway stretching on endlessly, winding like a dream. Lily opened the wooden box further and found a large knife, its blade glowing red, vibrating strongly when she touched it, as if it wanted to jump out of her hand. The whisper echoed, not from the box, but from the air, from the darkness. "You've chosen." Emma cried, We didn't choose anything. But Lily knew, from the moment they picked up the public phone, from the moment the knife fell, they had been pulled into this curse. The red symbols spread across the basement walls, repeating their names like blood flowing, like he had carved them into their destiny. They ran, stumbling, searching for a way out, but the scraping followed them, sharp and slow, as if he was toying with them. Lily whispered, "We have to burn the knife, Emma." Emma nodded, but her hands trembled as she pulled salt from her bag. They scattered salt around the wooden box, hoping the old woman's words were true, but the salt rose in black smoke, and the figure appeared right in front of them, no longer far away, the knife dripping blood, its red eyes staring deeply into them, as if it wanted to suck their souls. Lily screamed, throwing the large knife into the corner of the basement, and a burst of flame erupted from the salt, swallowing the knife. But the scream of the figure rang louder, as if ripping the space apart, as if he didn't vanish but had grown angrier. They ran out of the basement, tripping over stones, their breaths coming in gasps, and when they emerged outside, the sky was bright, but the industrial area was still cold, as if it had never seen sunlight. Lily looked back and saw a red trail leading from the basement to the ground, like blood flowing, like he was still following them. Emma grabbed her hand, both trembling, but they knew the knife was not the answer, not the key. The whisper still echoed in Lily's head, "You belong to me." She checked her hand and saw the scar from the knife spreading wider, glowing red, and Emma whispered, "I see it too, Lily, on my neck." They went back home, locked the door, but the scratching sounded again, now from inside the house, as if he was already there, waiting for them all along. They sat in the room, holding each other, listening to the wind howling through the window, and every little sound felt like his footsteps. Lily opened her father's notebook again, finding another note. "He doesn't die. He only sleeps." She shivered, wondering if her father had ever faced him, had ever seen the red eyes. Emma whispered, "We have to return the knife, Lily. Return it to where it all started." But how could they return it when every step they took seemed to bring him closer? They held hands, knowing that tonight he wouldn't stop, and every scraping sound was a reminder that their blood had been marked. Lily and Emma sat in the room, hearts pounding, the scratching from the walls like a knife slicing through the air, sharp and slow, as if he were toying with them. Despite having no clear evidence, they believed the man meant to harm them. They opened the notebook from the basement and found the last line, "Burn the marked object to stop the curse." Lily picked up the first knife they had found, her hand trembling as she placed it on the table. They set it alight, and the knife burst into flames, black smoke rising, carrying the scent of dried blood, causing both of them to hold their breath. The screaming echoed throughout the house, as if he had vanished. But when the fire died down, the scar on Lily's hand burned, as if it had been freshly carved, glowing red. Emma screamed, pointing to her neck, where the knife scar had deepened, shining like blood. They ran outside, the sky bright, but the industrial area remained cold, as though it had never seen sunlight. Lily and Emma reported to the police again, but no one believed them. The police checked the warehouse, but found no knife or notebook, only scratches on the wall, deep and long like claw marks. They returned home, thinking the curse had ended, but that night Lily saw a new knife on the table, engraved with the names Lily and Emma, gleaming like his eyes. Emma called, her voice frantic. "I have a knife too, Lily." It appeared, in my room. They met up, realizing the scars on their hands and neck were spreading, engraved with red symbols, whispering their names each night, as if he were speaking through their skin. Lily rummaged through her father's notebook, finding another note. "He doesn't die, he only sleeps, and blood awakens him." She shivered, wondering if her father had ever faced him, had ever seen the red eyes. Emma whispered, "We have to return the knife, Lily. Return it to where it all started." They decided to return to the industrial area, bringing the large knife and salt, their hearts pounding. Inside the warehouse, the red circle on the floor still glowed, the knives embedded around it vibrating strongly, as if calling for blood. Lily placed their knife in the center of the circle, and the ground trembled, the screaming rising as if tearing apart the space. The shadow appeared, not walking, but hovering, the blood-dripping knife gleaming in its hand, its red eyes burning brightly, staring into them. Emma screamed, holding Lily's hand, but the scars on both of them began to smoke, as if being burned from within. Lily whispered, "We have to end this." They threw salt into the circle, and a flame erupted, swallowing the shadow. But his scream still echoed, blood for blood. They ran out of the warehouse, stumbling, breathless. When they got home, a package lay in front of Lily's door, no label, containing 2 knives, engraved with Lily and Emma, gleaming brightly. Lily screamed, throwing the package out into the yard, but it reappeared in the room, as if placed by invisible hands. Emma cried, "He's not leaving, Lily, he's inside us." They went to the old woman's house again, but it was empty, with only a red piece of paper on the table. "You've opened the gate." Lily shuddered, knowing the curse wasn't just about the knife, but about them, their blood. They sat in the room, holding each other, hearing the scratching from the walls now louder, as if he was breaking the boundary between them and him. Lily checked the scar and saw it spread across her hand, engraving red symbols, and Emma whispered, "I saw him in my dream, Lily. He wants blood." They decided to burn all the remaining knives, but when the fire blazed, black smoke shaped into a figure, its red eyes staring deeply, and the scratching sound came from inside the house as if he had been inside for a long time. Lily screamed, "He's not stopping!" Emma grabbed her hand, both trembling, knowing that every knife they burned only made him stronger, closer. They ran outside, searching for safety, but the footsteps followed, slow, as if he knew they couldn't escape. Lily looked back and saw the shadow standing under the streetlight, the knife gleaming, its red eyes burning brightly. Emma cried, "We've opened the gate, Lily. What now?" They held each other's hands, running into the darkness, but the whisper still echoed in their heads. "You belong to me." Lily knew they had been marked, not just by the knife, but by their own blood, and he would never leave. Never stop. Lily and Emma sat in the dark, holding each other, the scratching from the walls tearing through the night like a knife slicing through the air. They could still hear the footsteps of the man. They had burned every piece of paper from the basement, every knife they had found. But each time the flames flared up, black smoke formed the figure of a person, its red eyes glaring, whispering their names. The scar on Lily's hand spread, glowing red, whispering her name every time she closed her eyes, and Emma whispered, "I see him in my dreams, Lily. He wants blood." Lily checked her father's notebook one last time and found the line, "Return the knife to the circle or blood will flow forever." They decided to return to the industrial area, bringing the final large knife, their hearts pounding. Inside the warehouse, the red circle on the floor glowed brightly, the knives embedded around it vibrating strongly, as if calling for blood, as if wanting to drink it. Lily placed their knife in the center of the circle, and the ground trembled, the screaming rising, as if tearing apart the space, as if he was enraged. The figure appeared, not walking, but floating, the knife dripping fresh blood, its red eyes glowing brightly, staring deeply into them. as if wanting to pull them into the darkness forever. Emma screamed, holding Lily's hand, but the scars on both of them began to smoke as if being burned from within, as if he was carving them one final time. Lily screamed, "And this!" They threw salt into the circle, and a flame erupted, swallowing the figure, swallowing the knife, but his scream still echoed, not weakening, but growing louder. "You are mine." They ran out of the warehouse, stumbling over rocks, their breath coming in gasps. But when they looked back, the red trail leading from the circle to the ground was still there, like blood flowing, like he was still following, like he had never left. A week later, a package arrived at Lily's house, no label, containing 2 knives engraved with Lily and Emma, gleaming brightly like his eyes. Lily knew he wouldn't stop. She threw the package out, but it reappeared in the room, as if placed by invisible hands. The scars on their bodies spread, engraved with red symbols, whispering their names every night as if he was speaking through their skin. The scratching echoed from within the walls, from the floorboards, from every dark corner, and the figure stood outside the window, its red eyes glowing, the knife gleaming as if reminding them that their blood had belonged to him. They ran to the old woman's house, but it was nothing but ashes, as if it had been burned to the ground, and a red piece of paper floated in the wind. Blood for blood. Lily grabbed Emma's hand, both of them trembling, knowing that the curse wasn't just about the knife or the circle, but about them, the blood flowing through them. The whisper echoed in Lily's head, "You belong to me." They ran outside, searching for safety, but the footsteps followed, slow, as if he knew they wouldn't escape. Lily looked back and saw the shadow standing under the streetlight, the knife gleaming, its red eyes burning brightly, like a promise that he would be there forever. They held hands, running into the darkness, but every step seemed to bring them closer to him. The scar on Lily's hand burned, whispering her name, and Emma cried, "We can't escape, Lily." They stopped, holding each other, hearing the scratching from all sides, as if he had surrounded them, as if he had become the darkness. Lily whispered, "We tried, Emma." But she knew deep down that their blood had paid the price, and he wouldn't stop, never stop, until the last drop of blood had been drained. "15 stories have come to an end, but the darkness hasn't let go of you. Do you feel a cold breath on the back of your neck, or hear a faint scratching sound from the door? These stories aren't just tales. They are warnings, etched deep into your mind, making you glance back at the corner of the room with suspicious eyes. From the creaking house to the deserted road at midnight, every mystery leaves a red streak, like blood, calling you back. But don't think this is the end. There are more stories, darker ones, waiting for you in the next chapter, where the truth is more terrifying than any nightmare. Will you dare to return? Or will you lock the door, turn off the lights, and pretend not to hear the whispers calling your name? Don't rush to leave. Stay tuned to discover what lies hidden in the darkness, where the curse never sleeps. Thank you for being here, but be careful on your way home. Check under your bed, for something has followed you from these stories, and it's waiting for you in silence. See you again, if you're brave enough.